Poor Okami steps into his second year at the senior high school for 10th graders, yet his story unfolds far beyond the boundaries of ordinary life. Within this body resides not an ordinary student, but a true prince of demons, a being from another world, unlike any human. Poor Okami, a demon more than 2,000 years old, carries the appearance of a child. Each day brings the challenge of concealing his true identity from those around him. Struggling to regain composure, he reminded himself that stage fright was one thing, but losing control would reveal his true self. Meanwhile, the teacher introduced the new student, and Poro nearly fainted from the surge of anxiety. At long last, his lifelong dream came true as he arrived in Japan, the land of the rising sun. Yet a single misstep on this very first day might force him to return to the dreadful world of demons. In the demon world, power reigns supreme. Monsters relentlessly hunt and destroy one another, each one desperate to climb higher in the rankings. For demons, only a single purpose exists: to grow ever stronger. In strength alone can they inscribe their names among the ranks of the mighty. Daily battles and killings have become routine, as every victory boosts their rank and earns them greater fame. In that world, justice and compassion had vanished, leaving behind only endless bloodshed and relentless struggle. Yet amid the chaos, one refused to accept this fate. The demon prince Poro could no longer hold back his emotions. Tears welled up in his eyes as he shouted out his hatred for everything around him, despite being ranked first in terms of strength. For 2,000 years, daily battles had become his reality. Despite his disdain for violence, relentless monsters left him with no choice but to wield his strength time and again. 1 year remained until the Demon King would step down, and the highest-ranked contender would inherit the throne. In this world, destiny was bound to the inescapable rules of the ranking. The only escape lay in death, yet Poro had no intention of dying or taking his own life. Instead, he searched tirelessly for another way out. Confusion clouded his mind as he tried to grasp why things had to unfold this way. Each trip to the store for manga turned into a battleground, with hundreds of strange opponents launching attacks, all desperate to climb higher in the rankings. In this world, the title of prince held no value without true strength. The king took pride in his son's might, yet Poro never longed to become a tyrant. Solitude brought him happiness, especially when he could immerse himself in his favorite manga of the Sanitarius genre. All too often, he failed to notice when the next manga revealed itself as a monster intent on his destruction. Troubles lined up one after another, each more relentless than the last. Observers watched him with knowing smiles, amused by his seeming misery. To them, the once mighty demon appeared pitiful, and their quiet laughter mocked his fallen state. The demon known as Paradise fixed his gaze on Poro and announced with unwavering confidence that this time, victory would be his. Standing beside him, his companion Fu offered his support, both sharing the same grand ambition, to rise as legendary demon kings. Shock washed over Poro, who had pleaded with them countless times to stop. Despite his desperate requests, their patience had finally run out, and they coldly ordered him to die. Eventually, the demons collapsed into unconsciousness and afterward offered their apologies. Poro asked only that they keep out of his sight from now on. His companion suggested that everything stemmed from his refusal to deliver a fatal blow. Still, Poro had no desire to become a butcher, fully aware that taking lives would only breed more monsters. Among the demons, only ruthless creatures driven by violence roamed, and Poro's hatred for this world finally reached its peak. Despair shadowed every corner of his existence. Only within his modest oasis, the world of humans, could his weary heart find shelter. Poro shared tales of the human world, a place he sometimes ventured into. Opening the door to his room, he stepped straight into the familiar chaos that greeted him every time. Amid the swirling chaos, beauty revealed itself to him. Awe filled his heart as the world of humans unfolded like a genuine marvel before his eyes. In recent times, human culture began to spread more easily, even into the demon world. The creativity on display was truly remarkable. Yesterday's order had already arrived, filling the air with excitement. For a demon raised amidst death, Every detail felt novel and vibrant, glowing with an almost radioactive brilliance. The purpose of many objects remained a mystery to him, stretching far beyond the limits of his imagination. Perhaps their functions were so remarkably clever that even a demon could not fathom them. Poro felt certain that his thoughts were not mistaken. Japan drew him in more than any other place. A land defined by tranquility, artistry, and the beauty of nature, it captured everything he cherished about the human world. To Poro, Japan seemed almost impossibly perfect. Driven by fascination, he immersed himself in learning the language, carefully jotting new words and phrases into his notebook while imagining a future life beneath distant cherry blossoms. Then an unexpected thought crossed his mind, quietly turning the course of his dreams. In 2,000 years, Poro had never felt determination like this. At that very moment, he made up his mind to set off for Japan. Once the decision was made, everything unfolded effortlessly. Although there were several ways to cross into another dimension, securing a student visa proved to be the simplest route. Aware that attempts would be made to stop him, he quietly left behind a letter asking not to be searched for. Then, for the first time in his life, boarded the Shinkansen bound for the human world. The grand title of Demon King was nothing more than a symbol. Walking away from it would not alter anything. A wealth of knowledge about Japan would surely prove useful for fitting in. Joy surged within him as he bid farewell to his role as heir and set out toward the world he cherished. Happiness shimmered so close that tears almost welled up, visions of a wonderful human life dancing in his mind. Yet when the decisive moment arrived, panic surged through him, and relentless demonic energy refused to release its grip. The teacher announced the arrival of a new student, and Poro was called to step inside. A surge of fear swept over him as everything began to unravel, veering sharply from the plan. Rumor had it that the scent of citrus fruits brought a sense of calm. Yet, as Poro pulled out the lemon, the fruit suddenly turned on him, its flesh sinking into his skin. Disbelief washed over Poro as he realized the impossible. He was being devoured by a berry. Bloodied and shaken, a fragile sense of calm began to settle over him. Memories surfaced of countless hours spent mastering the language, etiquette, and traditions until exhaustion claimed him. All he needed now was belief in himself. The plan was straightforward. Radiate enthusiasm, speak boldly, sprinkle in humor. Making a strong first impression would unlock the door to a new life. His hand tightened around the doorknob. Nerves ran so high that he barreled straight through the door without noticing, then cheerfully greeted the class. Shock swept through the students and their teacher as a section of the wall crashed into the classroom along with the door. The students immediately likened the newcomer to a gorilla, yet even a gorilla couldn't smash through a wall using a door. Most of them concluded it must have been a strange coincidence. A quiet murmur swept through the classroom as whispers filled the air. Poro slumped into his seat, a wave of gloom settling over him as he longed for anything to end his misery. The vast, unbridgeable chasm between human strength and demonic power slipped his mind completely. Should anyone accidentally discover his true identity, trouble would become unavoidable. People might respond with hatred, fear, or even recognize him as a prince. The threat of disaster loomed very real. Chaos had taken over completely. The only hope left was to glance around, gather any sense of direction, and brace for a return to hell. Yet, in that moment, something unexpected happened. A fellow student placed a hand on Poro's shoulder and complimented his performance. Startled, Poro leapt up and accidentally split the desk in two. He tried to pretend as if nothing had happened. The new acquaintance introduced himself as Yuta. Sitting behind, he offered his help should Poro need anything. Gratitude for his kindness filled Poro's heart. Yuto's attention was captured by the book that Poro was reading, its pages filled with notes about famous Japanese landmarks. Even the demon's handwriting struck him as charming. Poro admitted a desire to live an ordinary life, though finding the right materials proved challenging. A classmate guessed that Poro was a migrant. Such an unusual name and curious eyes sparked intrigue about his origins. Realizing he had revealed too much, Poro quickly replied that he came from a land so distant, the answer itself sounded almost like a joke. Noticing his discomfort, Yuta suggested they simply leave things as they were and unexpectedly became his guide through the city. Always ready for a good time, he welcomed any adventure, games, karaoke, movies, bowling, even a trip to the aquarium. The most important part was sharing these moments together. Yuta asked where Poro would like to go. The demon paused, pondering the question quietly. With a burst of excitement, he declared his desire to explore everything. Ambition sparked in his words, and Yuta simply offered him a gentle smile. Meanwhile, hidden among the trees at the edge of the schoolyard, demons observed his every move in silence. None of them suspected that this troublemaker was hiding among humans. One suggested ending his life right then and there, but another intervened, insisting that the right moment had yet to come. Yuta invited Poro to the movies and claimed that anyone who watched this film would die in 7 minutes. Poro didn't believe a word, but as the story unfolded on the screen, the eerie scenes unsettled him so completely that he ended up screaming for the entire theater to hear. After the movie, Poro admitted that if the screening had gone on any longer, he would have wet himself. The thought of people actually enjoying such things puzzled him. Yuta chuckled, remarking that for some, fear brings a thrill. Poro kept an endless list of places he longed to visit: arcades, bowling alleys, movie theaters. Every spot felt like a thrilling discovery, fueling his desire for even more adventures. A bittersweet smile flickered across his face as silent tears welled in his eyes. Inwardly, he assured himself he had made the right choice in embracing the human world. Yuta watched him, puzzled by the words he could not grasp. Poro simply shook his head, as if to brush the moment aside, and right then, he accidentally bumped into a man passing by. A group of tough-looking delinquents blocked his path, demanding respect with hard eyes. Their leader spoke up, declaring that apologies wouldn't cut it this time. 10 punches and some cash were now the price to pay. Poro apologized, admitting he had simply drifted off in thought. Yet one of the boys grabbed him by the collar, insisting that an apology alone wouldn't suffice. He demanded Poro's wallet. The others only laughed, admiring their leader's calm and collected demeanor. Before the leader could finish his sentence, Poro's fist crashed straight into his face. A tense silence swept over the crowd as Yuta drove his fist squarely into the bully's face. The impact sent the boy sprawling backward until he crashed to the ground, while his friends stood frozen in terror. Poro quickly realized this was likely the notorious Maya gang. Rumor had it they were expanding their territory. In that moment, Yuta's demeanor shifted. Cracking his knuckles, he slipped seamlessly into character. The boys had yet to realize who stood before them. Suddenly, their eyes caught sight of a familiar hairpin gleaming in his hair. This was Yuta, better known by his notorious nickname, Tadashi, a local troublemaker. Instantly, the group began to feign offense. He replied that he usually followed the law, but for people like them, he would make an exception. Recently, he had caught a pickpocket and a pedophile, yet both just laughed it off. Among them, one harbored a grudge against him, accusing him of meddling where he didn't belong. They demanded to know if he had any real reason to start a fight with them. Poro referred to him as Dad, subtly warning that messing with Yuta was dangerous. Anyone who tried would soon find themselves in the hospital. Yuta shouted that he was ready to fight, but the gang immediately turned and fled, muttering apologies as they ran. Poro watched in confusion, unfamiliar with what Tadashi even meant. Yuta stared at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend how anyone could be unaware of something so basic. The word Tadashi turned out to mean friend. Yuta pointed at himself, then at Poro, making the connection clear. Offering a quick apology to the boys for the delay, he hurried after them. Joy filled Poro's heart when someone finally called him a friend. Stories from manga and anime had taught him that friendship meant trust and support, treasures completely foreign in the demon world. While Poro savored this new bond, Yuta was already eagerly handing out treats. The gang leader stepped forward, a fierce scowl twisting his face. Something gleamed in his hand, making Poro instantly realize the gravity of the situation. With lethal intent, he raised his weapon toward Yuta. Sensing the impending threat just in time, Poro shouted a warning, urging Yuta to turn around. Arms shot forward instinctively, and somehow unleashed a force so great that the attacker slammed into the ceiling before crashing down hard onto the floor. Friends rushed to his side, desperate to wake him. Frustration and vows of revenge spilled from their lips. Yuta offered his thanks to Poro, though doubt clouded his faith in the boy's strength. Meanwhile, Poro stood drenched in sweat, his nerves fraying. At the sound of someone shouting about the police, Yuta grabbed Poro's hand and pulled him along without hesitation, urgency in every step. Escape was their only option now. Their next destination was the karaoke bar. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the building, two demons observed the scene below. They found it amusing that those fools were trying to extort money from the most powerful demon of all. One of them laughed at how pitiful Poro's attempts were to blend into human society. A deep sadness lingered in his expression. Yet, an admission passed between them. The human world shimmered with its own kind of magic, games, girls, and endless diversions. Temptation hung in the air when one suggested indulging in a bit of fun. However, the other quietly insisted that their focus must remain fixed on the mission. The goal remained clear: eliminate Poro, fulfill the grand dream, and secure a place as a royal contender. Right now, seizing attention could prove disastrous, for this was the perfect opportunity. A gap in his defenses caught their attention. One demon exchanged a glance with his partner, signaling that the moment had arrived. Meanwhile, Poro and Yuta enjoyed a karaoke session. Yuta arrived with drinks and neatly arranged the glasses on the table. Yuta gently nudged Poro on the shoulder, quietly urging him to keep moving as a staff member walked by. Flushed with embarrassment, Poro glanced nervously at the song list. Just then, timid voices drifted in from beyond the door. Someone launched into a heartfelt song about the truest of friends, dedicating every lyric to them. Despite feeling uneasy about his odd introduction, Poro found himself amazed by everything he had managed to experience on his very first day. Coming to the human world turned out to be the best decision he had ever made. After a few minutes, curiosity nudged him to check on Yuta. Pushing open the door to the room, he braced himself, blaming the lingering effects of alcohol for his unease. Yet what greeted his eyes left him utterly stunned. A glowing pentagram marked with a mysterious inscription shimmered on the wall before him. Poro could not grasp why she had appeared in this place, but the ancient language of demons echoed in his mind. A sense of unease crept over him, warning that nothing good could come of this. The message read, "If you wish to save your friend, come to us." Embedded within was a magical seal capable of instant teleportation. At that moment, Poro realized darkness lingered in this world and that demons had taken Yuta. The purpose behind their actions remained a mystery. No matter how long he pondered, the answer remained elusive. One thing stood clear in his mind: Yuta had to be brought back. Without a moment's hesitation, his hand reached for the seal. Instantly, the world around him began to warp and distort. Poro suddenly found himself transported to a completely different place. Glancing around, he noticed the surroundings resembled the den of werewolves. Behind his back, someone seemed delighted to see him again, as if they still owed him something from days gone by. Glancing over his shoulder, Poro spotted the same two demons. They had seized Yuta, who struggled fiercely in their grasp. One of the captors issued a cold warning. Resistance from Poro would mean death for the boy. Without hesitation, Poro sank his teeth into the demon's arm and demanded that his friend be released. His voice had taken on a steely, commanding edge. Meanwhile, the demon's companion quietly urged him not to involve the locals. Yuta urgently tried to warn Poro of the looming danger and begged him to run, but the demon silenced him with a firm grip over his mouth. Laughter echoed among the demons, their disbelief clear that a mighty demon could be ensnared by the human world. To them, this was his weakness. They saw no threat, convinced that with a hostage, Poro stood powerless. Yet Poro simply and quietly gave a single order: release Yuta. Laughter rang out once more as they mocked him, questioning his right to issue commands. Clearly, he failed to grasp the peril in which he stood. Their resolve to kill him with magic had nearly hardened. Despite their apparent advantage, Poro refused to back down. Determination blazing in his eyes, he lunged forward, his body shrouded in a menacing demonic aura. With swift precision, he seized the demon by the head. In that instant, an explosion thundered through the air as a surge of force swept across the scene. Poro glanced back, where everyone had just stood. Only a desolate emptiness remained. As the smoke cleared, a stunned Utah found himself staring at Poro, now enveloped in a menacing demonic aura. The demons stood frozen in disbelief, powerless to intervene any further. With fury in his eyes, Poro grabbed them by their clothes and hissed icily, demanding to know how they dared attack him. Poro fixed the demons with a furious glare, rebuking them for daring to attack his friend. Terror washed over the group. The certainty of their demise settled heavily in the air. Yet instead of seeking vengeance, Poro declared his disdain for killing and urged them to listen to his counsel. With those words, his strike tore through the air, and a portal blossomed open in the sky. A rift tore open in the fabric of space and time, leading straight into the realm of demons. Both fiends recoiled in alarm, confronted at last with the undeniable force of the mightiest being. Poro ushered them into the portal, bidding them farewell and ordering them never to return. In response, they warned that if they met again, it would mean his death. As soon as they vanished, the portal snapped shut behind them. The clouds parted, allowing sunlight to pour through the sky. Lifting his tear-streaked face, Poro felt a wave of relief and joy. The ordeal had reached a happy end, yet joy mingled with bitterness, for in that moment, his secret unraveled. The power he unleashed shattered the very fabric of space, leaving every trace of his disguise in ruins. Images of Yuta's reaction crowded his mind. Trust, which had just begun to grow, would wither away in an instant, replaced by anger at the deception. Cold rejection would follow, and the plea to stay away would leave him on the outside once again. No matter how far he runs, destiny always finds him. His demonic lineage clings to him like a persistent shadow. Poro believed the cheerful adventure had reached its melancholy conclusion. Behind him, though, Utah gazed intently at his horns and tail, a spark of fascination lighting up his eyes. Though Poro retreated at school, Utah saw it differently, believing that this was only the beginning. He encouraged Poro to take a deep breath, steadying himself for what lay ahead. Utah shared that those demons had revealed a great deal to him, even calling Poro a prince. With a warm smile, he reached out his hand, yet Poro hesitated, still wary. Utah appeared to accept everything, almost too easily. The conversation was meant to be far more serious, an official confirmation that he was a demon. Yet Utah had already pieced it together back by the doorway, and after the trouble with the bullies. Embarrassment washed over Poro. All he had wanted was to blend into the background. Utah gently took his hand and asked him to leave the past behind. For today, there would be no complaints. A warm smile spread across Utah's face as he spoke, assuring that it made no difference whether one was human or demon. True friendship revealed itself in that moment. Tears of joy welled up in Poro's eyes, and a gentle smile spread across his face. On the very first day, the wonders of the human world unfolded before him. In that moment, he discovered something far greater, his true calling. A deep affection for this world blossomed in his heart, filling him with dreams of staying forever. Still, he understood that the fate of a demon would eventually catch up with him. Sitting in his room, he jotted a few lines in his notebook. Should fate cross his path, he intended to meet it head-on. Determined to gather all the wonders of the human world, he looked forward to the day, just a year away, when he would ascend the throne and infuse the demon realm with a wave of change and renewal. His ultimate goal was to make beauty reign among demons, just as it did in the human world. With only a year left until the shift in power, Poro resolved to chronicle every glimpse of beauty he encountered in his exchange diary, determined to explore the world and hold on to his chances of survival. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, word spread among the other demons that the prince was enjoying himself among humans, prompting them to launch a search and teach him a harsh lesson. In broad daylight, a young boy noticed Poro standing near the traffic light and turned to his mother, curiosity in his eyes. She leaned close and whispered, urging him not to look, then gently led him away. Meanwhile, Poro, enchanted by the world of humans, gazed at the traffic light with fascination. One signal commanded a halt, another allowed passage. The simplicity struck him as brilliant. This was how people maintained order among themselves. In the demon realm, The rules of the road boiled down to just 3 signals: move, move again, and run someone over once more. A system as wild as this meant chaos reigned on every street. Had human stoplights ever been introduced, accidents might have dwindled. For now, only one figure held sway: the bloodthirsty maniac who called the shots. If given the choice, Poro would gladly cast aside his past and lose himself forever in this enchanting world of dreams. Yet fate had settled his future. Within a year, he was destined to ascend as the next demon king. Determined to make a difference, he chose to dedicate himself to studying in the human world, hoping that one day he could transform his own terrifying homeland into something as beautiful as this remarkable place. The mission entrusted to him is to fill the exchange student's diary with the finest treasures and experiences discovered in the world of humans. Witnessing someone help an elderly woman cross the street stirred unexpected tears. That evening, the journal entry read, "Empathy feels so deeply human. It's truly beautiful. And this is only the beginning." Just then, the attendance officer halted Poro. He had arrived at school 30 seconds late. The boy went by the name Tadashi, a monitor from Class 2 and an avid collector of watches. He fixed Poro with a stern, appraising gaze, making it clear he found her distant and withdrawn. Stunned and disbelieving, Poro struggled to accept that everything unfolding before him was real. Curiosity sparked in him, yet Tadashi simply responded by saying that being 30 seconds late was a violation. In Tadashi's eyes, a single late arrival equaled a single crime. To him, there was no difference between that and committing murder. On top of everything else, he faced accusations of demolishing a wall, smashing a desk, getting into a fight, and attempting to climb a traffic light. For more details, watch the video below. Thank you for watching. From the classroom window, the students quietly watched Tadashi's clumsy chase after Poro. Sympathy flickered in their eyes for his futile efforts. Among them, one caught sight of an odd creature lurking behind the bushes, its long ears giving it a rabbit-like appearance as it observed the scene in silence. Tadashi pressed Poro's cheek and remarked in a calm tone that, since Poro was still a newcomer, he would let it slide this time. Still, he reminded everyone that rules serve a purpose. Alcohol and smoking were strictly forbidden. Laws form the backbone of order, and school rules lay the groundwork for social awareness. Should the hero continue to ignore the rules, Tadashi will be left with no choice but to remove him from the team. While Tadashi tried to explain to the frightened Poro, laughter echoed from behind, prompting him to turn around. Spotting a group of boys with forbidden hair color, he shouted at them. The boys scattered in an instant. Weakness flooded Poro's legs, paralyzed by overwhelming fear. The mightiest demon shivered with fear, recognizing that Tadashi possessed a presence more terrifying than any fiend he had ever encountered. Poro made a mental note. Now more than ever, following the rules was absolutely essential. Meanwhile, the bullies shattered the prefect's glasses. One of them tried to offer an apology, but his companion quickly silenced him. Tadashi heard every word. With calm precision, Tadashi put on his broken glasses and murmured coldly, "Hopeless." A wild beast emerged atop the roof, catching the eye of someone who saw in it the perfect instrument for a fresh murder. By unleashing this monster to defeat Poro, the path to becoming the top-ranked demon in the world opens effortlessly. Meanwhile, Utah engaged in a quiet conversation with someone about the strange occurrences surrounding the new student. The things they had witnessed sent a shiver down their spines. The strange mushrooms sprouting from the hero's head caused a new wave of surprise. Everyone around was caught up in heated discussions about the identity of this mysterious boy. Confusion filled the air, leaving understanding out of reach. A deep sadness weighed upon Poro, prompting Utah to carry him on his back. Poro confessed that he had broken the school rules and felt unworthy of being there. All the while, he clutched a mushroom that thrived on demonic despair, savoring greater suffering as a delicacy. Amused, Utah chuckled but couldn't help noting that Poro seemed to grow heavier with every step. Iwao's severe demeanor and almost inhuman aura made it clear that her words shouldn't be taken to heart. Utah suggested telling the elder the truth or asking for Claire to be brought in, but Poro dismissed the idea, convinced it wouldn't lead to anything good. The heroes made their way down the corridor when, suddenly, a battered thug with white hair came flying out from around the corner. Clearly shoved by someone, he crashed hard against the wall. Everyone turned as Tadashi approached, having already subdued and captured the second troublemaker. Spotting Yuta and Poro, he assumed they were simply on their way home. Poro attempted to ask what had happened, but Tadashi pretended not to understand. His eyes shifted from the battered thug to the group of boys, and then he calmly inquired why they cared so much. Placing a foot on the delinquent's face, he declared the names: Sueshi Sato and Rai Unakamura from Class 2E. Smoking, dyeing their hair, and breaking the rules had marked them as targets for punishment. He believed he was teaching them a lesson. But Poro protested, calling out that this was not discipline, but sheer cruelty. Tadashi replied that true horror lies in breaking the rules. In his view, the world would be a better place without people like that. He felt no remorse for his actions. Poro asked him to stop, yet Tadashi believed he was simply being interrupted. A dark, demonic aura began to seep from him. Adjusting his glasses with calm precision, Tadashi quietly announced his intention to destroy them all at once. Charging forward, he launched an attack, but Yuta and Poro managed to dodge just in time. The force of the blow shattered the asphalt, leaving Yuta stunned, unable to comprehend how such a feat could be possible. Meanwhile, the bullies regained consciousness and scrambled to escape the monster's grasp. Iwao, however, shouted that there was no way they could outrun it. The moment he launched his punch, Poro's hand intercepted it mid-air, halting his fist with unwavering strength. Yuta called out to him, his voice tinged with worry. In that moment, Poro found himself standing face to face with Tadashi, whose presence radiated the same unsettling demonic aura as before. In that instant, understanding dawned on Poro. The village elder, clearly taken aback, fixed his gaze and asked, "Just who are you, Kirakami?" Suspicions had already begun to form that Poro was far from an ordinary person, but Poro simply replied that a shadow had overtaken him, something dark within consuming him entirely. Tadashi still couldn't grasp Poro's words, yet a memory surfaced. Poro once insisted that the rules applied to everyone, no exceptions. In the demon world, laws held no power. On the surface, it seemed like true freedom, yet beneath it all, chaos reigned, pressing down heavily on every soul. Kindness and compassion held great value among people. Law and order found their foundation in morality, shaping society into a better place. Yet taking justice into one's own hands led only to wrongdoing. Clearly, Mr. Tadashi had lost all control over himself. The class president glanced at Poro in astonishment. Meanwhile, the hero tightened his fist with determination and commanded the demon to release Iwao's body. With a fluid motion, he drew the shadowy demonic essence straight from the body. The demon stared in disbelief, unable to grasp that Poro possessed such power. From within emerged the true culprit, a rabbit-shaped controller. Outwardly innocent, this being poisoned its host's mind, feeding on negativity. With a sly smile, it greeted the prince, remarking that many years had passed since they last met. Anger flashed across Poro's face as he demanded to know how anyone could dare toy with the soul of a respected person. The rabbit apologized sincerely, pleaded for forgiveness, and then, with a mischievous glint, suggested they play just a little longer. Suddenly, the creature launched an attack. Without a master to command him, he acted on his own instincts. Poro flicked his finger, sending the attacker flying with all his strength. It served as a fitting lesson for anyone who dared to defy the rules. The following day, Poro gazed in fascination at the red box, a telephone booth. The concept of people communicating without the use of magic or electricity struck him as nothing short of miraculous. The passerby expressed gratitude for the help received the day before. Clarity settled in his mind as he realized that the destruction of the wall and the desk was caused by a force beyond Poro's control. Poro arrived late 2 times in a row. Dropping to his knees, he admitted his mistake. Meanwhile, Yuta laughed and clapped mockingly, taking the opportunity to tease his friend. Yuta remarked that Iwao could never commit such an act. Only demons were capable of deeds like that. The class president snapped the stopwatch shut and remarked that they were only a few minutes late. Yet, in his eyes, Even this slight delay spelled disaster. Avoiding obsession with rigid rules, he guarded himself from falling under the demon's control once more. Moved by this resolve, Poro gazed at Iwao, a gentle smile spreading across his face. Meanwhile, the demon rabbit tumbled down onto the moon. White lunar rabbits, who had never encountered such a sight before, gathered around in curious astonishment. In the human realm, Ryan Fu and his partner remained behind. The sight of a familiar girl caught them off guard. A slow smile spread across Ryan's face, clearly surprised to find her in this unlikely place. The girl didn't recognize them and dismissed the group, declaring she had no time for weaklings. She suggested they leave quickly before she changed her mind. The demons, hoping to win her favor, flattered her by insisting she was worthy of being the goddess of fire. Eager to prove themselves, they spoke of newfound strength gained after their last defeat, determined to demonstrate just how much they had grown. In the blink of an eye, a pillar of light cleaved the sky. The clouds scattered, leaving behind the charred remains of demons. Without pausing, the girl continued on her way. One wounded creature managed only a faint whisper, wondering if it had all been a joke. Meanwhile, Ruika Kagami made up her mind. The next demon king would become her husband, and she would settle for nothing less. Even before finishing the manga, tears were already streaming down Poro's face. Unable to hold back, he declared the story a true masterpiece. Meanwhile, Utah simply laughed at the sight of the hero weeping over the siege scene. Poro explained that demons marry and have children as well, but romance holds no meaning in their world. Experiences like dates, kisses, and awkward moments are viewed simply as signs of an advanced culture. Demons care only about pure blood. Marriage for them is merely a means to produce stronger offspring. Utah, half in horror, joked that it was no different from breeding prize stallions. Poro yearned to explore this subject in greater depth and hoped to bring newfound wisdom back to his homeland, believing it might soften their harsh fight-or-die mentality. Utah had already begun to suspect that Poro possessed remarkable strength. Poro swiftly steered the conversation elsewhere, rolling his eyes in the process. Utah remained puzzled by the sudden shift, but at that moment, their teacher called out to them. The announcement of a new student in class had barely escaped her lips when a girl crashed into the door. With calm confidence, the newcomer swung the door open with her foot and offered a casual greeting. A striking figure reminiscent of a demoness made her entrance and introduced herself as Ruika Kagami. She confessed a fondness for strong men and expressed delight at the opportunity to meet them. Utah made a playful remark about them now having 2 wreckers on their hands. Meanwhile, Poro clung nervously to his book, his grip tightening as anxiety flickered in his eyes. Його емоції вирвались назовні, і він випадково розірвав книжку навпіл. With a sly grin, Utah remarked, "Look, your future wife has arrived," causing Poro to turn pale. Over dinner, Ruika cornered Poro against the wall. He pleaded to be let go, but she ordered him to stay quiet. Leaving without telling his fiancée, how could he dare to do such a thing? She tore off his shirt and demanded he finally prove himself a man by giving her a child. Poro could do nothing but plead for help, his desperate gaze fixed on Utah. Satisfaction played across Ruika's face. Just as Poro had mentioned before, in their world, power alone held sway. Marriages between powerful clans were simply a way of life. Wrapping her arms tightly around him, she declared with certainty that their child would become the strongest demon of all. Eagerly, she suggested they should get married right away and start a big family. Poro, however, tried to wriggle out of the conversation. He explained that it was because of people like her that he escaped to the human world. Here, love exists. People meet, go on dates, share their lives together, and only then do marriage and children follow. Ruika found herself completely baffled. All these complications seemed unnecessary when people could just come together and have a child. The reasoning behind it all remained a mystery to her. Poro declared that he would not return home until his mission was complete, and his journal brimmed with wonders from the human world. Thoughts of children never crossed his mind. Ruika concluded that he had finally become a real boy. An idea sparked within her, to guide him through the art of romance. Her announcement came quietly. For now, she would turn down mating and instead offer help with the journal. Poro couldn't hide his surprise at her unexpected offer. Ruika considered this a wonderful prelude to their eventual marriage. Yuta asked if she was absolutely sure. With determination, Ruika assured him that she was ready to go through with it. Together, they would discover what love truly meant. The first step, she decided, would be to experience a real date. Off to the side, Yuta smiled quietly, choosing not to interfere. The group arrived at the zoo, surrounded on all sides by animals so fascinating that each new sight seemed to steal the breath away. Poro brimmed with excitement and invited Ruika to take a closer look at the charming creatures. Neither of them had ever set foot in a zoo before. Confusion flickered in Ruika's eyes as she wondered why animals were kept in cages when no one planned to eat them. Spotting a panda nearby, Poro eagerly grabbed Ruika's hand and urged her to come closer. She simply shrugged, finding the gesture awkward and unnecessary. Somewhere, Poro had read that holding hands was the right thing to do on a date. In her mind, Ruika dismissed him as a bit naive, especially if he truly believed she was here just to please him. Stealthily, she slipped a small bottle of perfume called Kitty from her pocket. Just one whiff, and any demoness would immediately lose all control. In truth, assisting with his diary was never part of her plan. She simply waited for the perfect moment when Poro would let his guard down. Gradually, her smile twisted into something more sinister. The moment she spritzed the perfume, chaos erupted all around. Even the animals seemed to lose their minds. Poro stood bewildered as the animals darted around like wild things. Only the label on the perfume revealed the truth. Not for use near animals as it provokes aggression. The scent would only fail to affect the most powerful demons. For every other living creature, its impact was immediate. Rage flared within Ruika, but it was already too late. Poro sensed that something was wrong with her, yet she brushed off his concern. A child's cry erupted near the panda enclosure. A panda had broken free. Rushing forward, Ruika arrived just in time to rescue the little one from the rampaging animal. Her concern for the boy's well-being was clear, yet his eyes met hers with nothing but fear. In that instant, a swarm of animals lunged at Ruika, yet with a single sweeping motion, Poro scattered the creatures and swiftly scooped both Ruika and the child into his arms. Just moments earlier, the animals had been in a frenzy, but now they rested quietly. Stunned, Ruika realized she hadn't even caught a glimpse of how he managed it. Poro wanted assurance that she was unharmed, but Ruika snapped at him, telling him to be quiet. Still, the hero commended her actions, acknowledging that she had saved a child. Accomplishing her task without harming the animal, she caught Poro off guard with her unexpected gentleness. Ruika simply scoffed, insisting she merely disliked seeing the defenseless mistreated. Their chance to linger here had passed. It was time to move forward. They went to the movies. During the emotional scenes, Poro, true to form, let tears slip down his cheeks. Meanwhile, Ruika sat motionless, her thoughts tangled in regret over how she had ruined everything. Taking advantage of the shadows, she set her plan into motion, binding Poro with a demonic serpent. What would happen next depended on how events unfolded. Poro spoke animatedly about the film. Ruika nodded along, pretending to agree with his thoughts. Moved by the beauty of the scene and the depth of its ideas, he couldn't hold back his tears. Although he understood their outing was just a practice date, spending time with Ruika brought a pleasant warmth. Even if only a little, the day managed to bring him quiet enjoyment. Ruiku felt a surge of irritation at the way those words were spoken. After the movie, Poro slipped quietly away to his usual spot for reflection, the stage. As he finished reading the latest scene, a mix of pain and excitement swept over him. The date had been full of laughter, yet the mystery of romance still eluded him. Meanwhile, Ruika silently scolded herself for sitting through the entire movie without taking any action. It wasn't love just yet, but Poro sensed that he had discovered something meaningful. 30 minutes after leaving the zoo, Poro suggested heading to a karaoke bar. Ruika stared in disbelief. Poro hadn't even broken a sweat. In that moment, she finally understood why he was known as the strongest demon. Meanwhile, Poro smiled contentedly and announced that he was full. Ruika politely asked for a moment. picked up her drink with ice and, suspecting that the potion might have failed, chose to finish the entire glass in one quick motion. Within moments, her cheeks flushed bright red and she slumped onto the table. Confusion filled Poro's eyes as he tried to grasp what had just happened. Ruika mumbled quietly, telling him to just forget it, and admitted it seemed to have worked. Closing her eyes, she unwittingly revealed the mark of poison on her arm, a detail that did not escape Poro's notice. Confusion swept over him as he struggled to understand the reason behind its sudden appearance. That mark signified that someone had taken a lethal dose of poisonous elixir. Ruika had not managed to warn that this was one of the most dangerous essences. Ready to embrace the end, she whispered her only regret, that she and Poro never had the chance to become a family. Suddenly, the warmth of his kiss stirred her from the brink, awakening her once more. As Ruika opened her eyes, she noticed the mark had vanished. A spectator would have whistled at the sight. What a scene it was. Poro had drawn out the poison from her lips, employing an ancient demonic technique. Admitting his ignorance about the type of poison, he relied on his skills to save the day. Relief washed over him upon seeing Rui's strength and resilience. With gratitude, he pulled her into a tight embrace. A flush crept across Ruika's cheeks as tension overwhelmed her. Unable to hold back, she struck him across the face and immediately dashed away. Yuta glanced at her in surprise. They hadn't even begun to unravel the meaning of romance. Taking a small sip from his glass, he thought to himself that Poro had clearly taught her everything she needed to know. Poro glanced around in confusion, searching for a place to pay for the water. The sound of an engine humming to life behind him drew his attention, and he found himself surprised by how quickly the car had warmed up. For the first time in his life, Poro took on a part-time job. The line stretched on endlessly as people clamored for service. Some requested coffee, others wanted a lottery ticket. When the coffee machine broke down, Poro apologized to each customer, doing his best to handle the disappointment. Their path led them to the store where Yuta worked. Sharing news of job openings, Yuta offered them a chance to start anew as shop assistants. Meanwhile, Yuta casually asked a customer if they tended to eat soup with chopsticks. The chance to learn how to live among humans was invaluable. When a woman grew upset over some expired juice, Poro offered an apology, unsure how to handle the situation. She patiently explained that expired juice should always be exchanged immediately for a fresh one. Managing the register, cleaning, serving customers, restocking shelves, and preparing food filled the list of daily duties. For Poro, who had spent 10,000 years in the demon realm, such work felt like pure torment. The scene felt like a true training session. Ruika carried herself like a seasoned employee, apologizing for any delays, handing over a box of goods, offering coffee from the fridge, and serving hot drinks. She even took the time to ask what should be listed on the receipt. For a moment, Poro assumed she had already worked here. But with a sly wink, Ruika called him a fool. Preparing to become his wife meant embracing all sorts of tasks: cooking, laundry, black magic, assassinations, taming dragons, and even taking part-time jobs at the shop. At one point, other customers asked Poro to clear the way, prompting him to spring into action. The sense that he alone was falling behind pressed in on him. Within minutes, exhaustion overtook him. The work at the shop proved far more demanding than he'd expected. He offered his thanks to his friends, though Rui only shrugged off his gratitude, insisting she had helped simply because he had asked, and that thanks were unnecessary. Sorrow lingered over Poro, weighed down by the thought that his actions had angered so many customers. Yet Yuta reassured him with calm conviction, insisting that such setbacks were mere trifles. Anyone who enters a fight, he explained, must accept that mistakes happen. Yuta declared that the customer is like a god. The store's sign displayed this very belief. Some shoppers misunderstood the idea, yet its true meaning ran much deeper. Poro listened intently and became lost in thought. A glow of excitement lit up his face as he delighted in this brilliant philosophy. This was the very core of human service. Ruika found herself astonished as well. In the demon world, dissatisfied customers were simply devoured. Over there, shopkeepers would prepare them as an appetizer. Poro resolved to record this idea in the diary, determined to one day bring it to life within his own world. Noticing Poro lost in thought, Yuta asked if something was wrong. Poro replied that he had merely been pondering the meaning of the word God. It was then that a mysterious man entered the shop. An instruction to stop chatting and focus on serving the customer broke the air. With a sly wink at Poro, he remarked how long it had been since their last meeting. Alertness flickered in Yuta. By now, the shop should have been closed. Judging by the expressions on Poro and Ruika's faces, the two clearly recognized the young man. Kamui stood there, calmly taking in the sights of the shop as though centuries had not passed since his last visit. His demeanor remained serene, giving no hint that anything out of the ordinary had occurred. Plucking a rice ball from the shelf, Poro immediately sensed the newcomer had shown up with the sole purpose of getting under his skin. Kamui claimed he had only wandered in by chance. He promised to leave as soon as he finished reading Weekly Jump. Poro asked him to stop acting like a fool. With a sigh, Poro muttered that he was worse than any demon, whether in this world, the underworld, or even in heaven. Tommy Kamui, a deity among the celestial elite, leisurely flipped through the pages of a manga, voicing his admiration for the storyline. The sight of the god standing before him stirred memories from Poro's past. Though Kamui's appearance seemed unremarkable, he was unmistakably the same being. Gifted with divine reading, Kamui had already followed the story to its end. The final memory that surfaced for Poro was of the wind's wrath. Their acquaintance stretched back to childhood, a history marked by Kamui's relentless torment. He would hurl meteors at him or make Poro vanish into thin air, all for no apparent reason. Poro hadn't understood why the man followed him, but the moment he caught sight of that smug grin, everything became clear. Kamui declared his truth. Strength had been his, yet one thing always eluded him: Poro. The hero clenched his fists, recognizing that this was no ordinary enchantment, but a magic born from the depths of the heart. As for Kamui, love had driven him to the brink of madness. Curiosity gnawed at him, refusing to let go of the thought that something out there remained unseen. An obsession with experiencing the unknown consumed him. No matter where Poro wandered, Kamui lingered at his side, always plotting ways to ruin his day. Just as the thought crossed his mind, Ruika lunged forward and delivered a powerful kick straight to the god's face. It didn't matter to her who he was. She had come here to protect Poro, and if the god dared to threaten the hero again, she would utterly destroy him. Kamui soared into the air, yet managed to shout that the customer is still a god. In his eyes, he is both the client and a god at once. Frustration welled up in Ruika as she realized her powerlessness. Poro gently asked her to calm down. He explained that he had severed his connection to the spiritual realm to learn how to exist in the human world. He wished for the conflicts of heaven and hell to remain distant from people's lives. Yet a client remains a client. Once again, Kamui provoked Ruika, but she quickly silenced him. A smile flickered across Kamui's face. This kind of attitude suited him well. With a subtle nod, he urged Poro to hurry, hinting that now was the time to take a chance. Offering a brief apology, he waved his hand, and suddenly every ingredient in the shop sprang to life. Yuta froze in disbelief as chicken skewers scurried about and plates burst into song. Kamui asked for a moment to set things right, but before getting to work, he became engrossed in the anniversary edition of Jump. While Poro scolded him for the delay, Yuta fretted over how to rein in the wild beasts. Even the canned tuna sprang back to life as a lively fish, while a bear unexpectedly appeared in the store. Kamui closed the book and, with a smile, remarked that the story had been quite intriguing. Amid the chaos, Kamui offered a quiet apology for being late. Poro couldn't help but think that even after 2,000 years, some things never changed. Yuta simply let out a sigh. God declared that he had absorbed enough miracle power and could now bestow holy energy upon any being he wished. Without pause, he noted that things around them were already beginning to change, hinting that soon everything would be transformed into a state of Sabbath. Describing the situation, he explained that divine beings merely release steam. In the worst-case scenario, their actions could drown all of Japan. Poro replied that if that happened, he would sink alongside the country. Grabbing Kamui by the collar, the hero shook him firmly, demanding that he fix the situation. Kamui reminded him with a calm voice that clients must be treated with respect. After a sincere apology from Poro, Kamui agreed to temporarily set everything back to how it was. With careful precision, Kamui neatly arranged the groceries in his basket, mentioning that he would soon take them up to the sky. Meanwhile, Poro scanned each item at the register at lightning speed, racing against time before all of Japan was destroyed. Kamui admitted he had enjoyed his time but said it was time to head home. He politely requested his onigiri be warmed up before he left. Not even a trace of anger flickered across Poro's face. Genuine confusion clouded his mind, unable to fathom how someone so wild could also possess such kindness. Kamui had said he enjoyed it. Poro set the microwave to work. The moment the stove turned on, it gleamed with a sharp glow. Onigiri began to shimmer, as if it were on the verge of bursting. Poro guessed that the reason was Kamui had been holding it all along, and the item had absorbed divine energy. Kamui reassured him, explaining that only the floor would explode. Panic gripped Poro as he begged Kamui to do something. Kamui replied that there was nothing more to be done. Memories surfaced of the journey he had taken to the edge of the universe with his sister, a trip that ended simply because they had run out of fuel. Now, with his so-called divine light nearly extinguished, Pororo stood frozen in disbelief and horror, eyes shifting anxiously to the onigiri. An explosion echoed through the air, yet, for reasons beyond understanding, everyone survived. Yuta and Ruika opened their eyes, trying to piece together what had just happened. Meanwhile, Kamui suspected he had merely been the target of a prank. Astonishment swept over him as Poro absorbed the energy. Fueled by rage, the hero seized the god by his mantle. As Kamui stared into Poro's demonic eyes, a sense of finality washed over him. Yet, Poro spoke in a flat tone, declaring, "This is a defective product. I request a replacement." Suddenly, he lost consciousness. His friends rushed to his side. A faint smile appeared on Kamui's face as he admitted defeat. Peru had proven himself superior, even outshining the divine. Content with the outcome, Kamui found satisfaction in how everything had played out. Relief washed over Yuta and Ruika when they saw that Peru was still breathing. Since that day, Kamui kept visiting the shop. Poro couldn't grasp the reason. After all, Kamui had already had his fun. Still, Kamui had never promised not to return. On top of that, he had taken the time to heal the cashier himself. He left 100 yen behind and quietly walked out. The following morning, Poro slowly opened his eyes to find a black-haired girl gently waking him. Her voice, calm but insistent, reminded him that it was time to get up, or he would be late. He stepped back in surprise. Meanwhile, she calmly announced that breakfast was ready, politely asking him to put away the futon. She mentioned that she had been waiting for him since early morning. Poro glanced around, trying to grasp his surroundings. His heart pounded furiously as he struggled to piece together the events of the previous day. Due to ongoing building renovations, Poro suddenly found himself without a place to stay, forced into the life of a homeless little demon. On his way home from school, Yuta noticed Poro's predicament and offered him a place to stay. Without lifting a finger, Poro found himself gifted with a home for free. He wandered through the rooms in awe, admiring every detail. Breakfast arrived, and each bite tasted like pure luxury. The beauty of the Japanese home captivated him, every detail crafted like a work of art. With a casual shrug, Yuta dismissed it all as nothing more than a large house. Poro, on the other hand, could hardly contain his delight. Smiling, the girl explained that the Hitoishi family had owned the estate for generations, and Yuta stood as the heir to a vast trading company. As for breakfast, the fish tasted divine. As the future heir, Yuta often found himself dealing with real estate, heavy industry, and other weighty matters. The burden of his father's high expectations pressed heavily on him. Turning to the girl, Yuta apologized for having acted so harshly. The girl apologized, leaving Poro puzzled about what had happened. Meanwhile, Utah mentioned that, despite the house's age, it had plenty of empty rooms and Poro was free to choose whichever one he liked. The reminder lingered that Poro, after all, was an exchange student, practically part of the family now. A warning followed about possible ghosts haunting the house. Unfazed, Poro insisted that such trivial matters did not scare him. Suddenly, the door swung open with a jolt. A stern-faced man appeared in the doorway, immediately confronting the boy about the color of his hair. This was Tadashi Yujin, the 10th head of the company and Yuta's father. He insisted that everything remain exactly as it was upon his return, and dismissed Poro as worthless. Meanwhile, Utah remained utterly calm. Upon noticing Poro, the father inquired about his identity. The girl explained that Poro was Utah's classmate and would be living with them from now on. Tadashi reached out for a handshake, introduced himself as the father of the fool, and welcomed their new guest. At first glance, Poro seemed like an ordinary boy, yet a depth lingered in his gaze, hinting at lifetimes beyond imagining. Unbeknownst to him, he stood face to face with a demon who had roamed the earth for more than 2,000 years. Father grew curious about Poro's father's occupation. With a vague air, Poro's father replied that his work involved people in some way. Father concluded he must be a manager, and Poro hesitantly agreed. The father made up his mind. The boy would undoubtedly manage the task. As for Utah, he had once been meant to inherit the company, yet wasted his days in idleness. Frequent brawls earned him a disgraceful nickname. He grumbled about how exhausting it was to keep everything in order. Meanwhile, Utah calmly finished his meal, set down his plate, and said, "You only show up when you want to lecture me." Tension hung in the air as her father's anger grew. Wanting to escape the chaos of this so-called business comedy, the girl suggested to Poro that they head to school instead. Grabbing a bamboo sword, the father struck Utah across the face. He insisted that Utah repeat his words. Utah dropped to the ground. Poro flinched, but quickly regained his composure and struck his father with a fist. To him, the thought of a man hitting his own child was unfathomable. Such a person did not deserve to wield a sword. The girls tried to intervene and pull them apart, their actions revealing this scene was all too familiar. Sharp words flew between father and son, each more biting than the last. Suddenly, the girl shouted, "Enough!" with such force that Poro nearly jumped out of his skin. In front of them stood Tatoshi's wife, Utah's mother. Calmly, she reminded them that people were watching, and their behavior brought shame. Two grown men, yet they acted like squabbling children. Utah announced he would head to school. His father threatened to scrub his neck clean and tossed out another pointed remark about the suicide note. With only a sigh, the mother took it in stride. This was their usual performance. The maids murmured among themselves, noting this sort of quarrel was nothing new. Without the mistress stepping in, those two would never come to a stop. A friend suggested keeping quiet, wary of being overheard. Utah's mother chose to pay it no mind. At that very moment, the principal approached and guessed that she was Utah's mother. Suddenly recalling that he had yet to introduce himself, Poro apologized for the oversight and offered his name, explaining that he was a friend of Utah. The girl regarded him with a look of surprise. Regaining her composure, she apologized for her abrupt reaction and expressed her gratitude for Poro's constant care of Utah. The hero wished to say the thanks should go to him instead. With a gentle smile, the woman introduced herself as Sumire, explaining she hadn't greeted him yesterday because she was away. Overhearing their conversation, she realized that Poro would be staying with them. Though the situation might appear unusual, she quietly made a heartfelt request, asking him to listen for a moment. She had a small yet important favor to ask. She explained that only Poro could offer any real help. There was a personal story she wanted him to hear. Meanwhile, Ruika tried once more to feed Poro. His stomach was so full he couldn't take another bite. Still, she pressed on, poking him with chopsticks loaded with sausages and insisting he eat more. She explained that these were romantic bentos, meant to be shared by those in love. It was his duty to eat every bite. Poro protested, reminding her that she wasn't his wife. Yet she silenced him, insisting he simply enjoy the meal. Yuta watched in astonishment, hardly believing she had prepared everything herself. Poro took a bite and admitted that it tasted delicious. However, Ruika immediately forbade him from eating anymore. She scolded Yuta for eating the dried squid. Yuta pleaded with her to make him a bento as well, but she only allowed him a single piece. Meanwhile, memories of Yuta's mother surfaced in Poro's mind. Her husband remained perpetually occupied, his mind so entangled with work that even in his sleep he lingered among colleagues. During her hospital stay, not once did he come to visit. At times, the memory of his own family seemed to slip away from him altogether. Only later did she realize how much harder all of this was for a child to endure. The realization dawned on her. He had been working for them all along, yet forgiving a family forgotten proved nearly impossible. The worry of even darker days ahead weighed on her heart. In her unease, she turned to Poro for help as a friend. Perhaps he could bring someone else into this, but the matter remained painfully intimate. She confided that Yuta would surely bring up the subject again once he returned, and for that reason, she asked Poro to keep everything secret. Not wishing for something worse to happen, she relied on Poro's discretion, and he wholeheartedly agreed to help. The tension between father and son brewed into an inevitable clash. This time, the stakes were higher and the atmosphere more charged than ever before. The father told his son that after the battle he would go to a meeting. Should he lose, Yuta would never leave the house again. But if he won, his son must never return. Poro reached out to stop Yuta, but Yuta simply turned to his father and told him to attack. His father agreed, adding that if he lost, Poro could stay. Left standing there, Poro felt helpless, unsure how to bring any of it to a halt. Blades clashed with a resounding force. The father firmly believed the pampered boy stood no chance of victory. In contrast, Yuta considered the old man completely out of his mind. At that moment, the mother appeared. Poro asked her how to stop them. A quiet sigh escaped her lips. Events had unfolded faster than she had expected. Yet now, nothing could be changed. Both were powerful, at least until one destroyed the other. She beckoned Poro to follow, assuring him that if they did everything right, success would be within their reach. For now, though, explanations would have to wait. Both fighters paused in the midst of their battle, each taking a moment to catch their breath. Yuta noticed the toll age had taken on his father, whose movements had grown slower and less sure. Still, his father's eyes betrayed a stubborn pride, unwilling to see Yuta as anything but weak. At that moment, a silent agreement passed between them. It was time to end this. Both warriors raised their swords and struck in unison. Suddenly a sea pig leapt between them, halting both attacks with a single bound. With astonishment, the father watched as Poro effortlessly blocked their strikes without so much as a scratch. Calmly, the hero reached into his pocket, pulled out a sheet of paper, and announced that he had witnessed exactly what he needed to reveal. Something of great significance was unfolding, which compelled him to intervene. The photograph captured a moment of pure happiness. Their family enjoying a day at the amusement park. The father could never understand how Poro came to possess it. That outing marked their first and only trip together, a memory shadowed by the fact that his health quickly declined afterward. This was the most recent photograph of their family taken since that time. Poro inquired about why everyone seemed to overlook the photograph. It turned out that he alone could see it, a result of his powerful magical abilities. The mother's soul quietly apologized for her silence, yet through Poro, she found a way to share her true feelings. The presence of ghosts did not frighten her. Such things felt insignificant next to the intensity of her emotions. At times, powerful emotions weave a kind of magic that lets a soul linger in the world. Because of her deep love for her family, she managed to return, and through her, Poro discovered for the first time just how profound the human heart could be. The soul offered its gratitude to Poro. Thanks to his swift connection with Yuta, she found the strength to depart. Before fading away, she entrusted him with the care of them both. Yuta and his father marveled at how Poro came to possess this photograph, believing it had been lost long ago. Yet the hero kept the secret locked within, unable to reveal the truth. Yuta suggested they head to school, but his father suddenly turned to him. He wished them both a safe journey. Poro expressed genuine gratitude for his concern. Later, Poro carefully wrote in his diary, "A true family is an invisible feeling that remains by your side always." The friends arrived at the bustling entertainment center, greeted by a sea of laughter and the clamor of excited crowds. Soccer matches played out in one corner, while others enjoyed tennis, billiards, and even archery. Poro couldn't contain his excitement, eyes wide with anticipation. Meanwhile, Yuta chose to warm up with a round of baseball, eager to get moving. Poro grasped Ruika's hand and tried to lead her toward the food court, but irritation flashed in her eyes. She pulled back and snapped, demanding he not yank her along. Confusion washed over Poro. Could it be that she disliked being touched? Suddenly, a girl with long hair appeared, pushing Ruika aside with her foot and rushing toward Poro, wrapping him in a warm embrace. Her face lit up with happiness at the sight of him. Many years had passed, yet Poro remained safe and unharmed. To his astonishment, it was Nonno who appeared before him. She had discovered that he now lived among humans and decided to pay him a visit. Yuta instantly sensed that she was no ordinary person. Ruika, on the other hand, seethed with anger at her arrival. Poro introduced Yuta to his childhood friend, an angel named Nana, who also happened to be the younger sister of that very same Kamui. Yuta could hardly believe it. The idea that the overdramatic god had such a sweet little sister left him stunned. The idea that the oddball had such an attractive relative seemed unbelievable to him. Poro chuckled, remembering how he had once doubted it himself. Since childhood, Nanma had always been kind, standing up for him against both gods and demons. For a time, she dwelled quietly among humans while her brother wandered in folly. The depth and intensity of human emotions left a lasting impression on her heart. Even as a child, she longed to help others. So the moment she left the heavens, her steps carried her straight to Poro. She asked if they could spend the day together. With a gentle stroke of her hair, he agreed. The promise of a wonderful day awaited, and together, the group set out eager to enjoy themselves. Nana lifted her hand with delight, calling out Poro's name. Without warning, Nanny's hand morphed into a tangle of razor-sharp vines. As Poro walked ahead, blissfully unaware, she treacherously drove the thorns deep into his back. The shock of her betrayal caught everyone off guard. With a burst of excitement, he dashed forward, his mind racing through all the games he could start with. Yet, calm and collected, Ruika intercepted Nana's strike and glanced at her smile. According to her, Nana never attacks openly, always sneaking around in the shadows. A warning came next, promising to keep a close eye on her. Dismissing Nana as nothing more than a fraud, she spoke sharply. Nana, in response, only laughed, brushing off the accusation and claiming she was nothing like the vulgar Ruika. Ruika warned Yuta that this girl had been hunting for Poro's life force for over 1,000 years. Poro remained oblivious, while Ruika quietly confirmed her intent. She was once again plotting to kill him and disappear amid the ensuing chaos. With a gentle smile, Nana replied that kill sounded much too harsh, for her motives ran deeper than the ocean itself. 1,000 years flashed through her thoughts as she remembered admiring a photograph of Poro, captivated by his soft gaze and mouse-like cheeks. Her room overflowed with photographs of Poro. A dream took shape within her heart, to marry him, even though he was a demon and she the sister of Kamui. Yet those secret snapshots, captured without his knowledge, began to unsettle Poro deeply. Striving to hide his fear, he reminded her that angels and demons are forbidden to marry. She suggested divine solutions, yet he replied that only rebirth could change their fate. A melancholy tale unfolded between them. At least this way no one else could steal him. Nana clutched the portrait so tightly that the glass began to crack. She made up her mind. It was better to destroy him herself than let anyone else have him. Kamui warned her that her exile would only break his heart. Nana wished to avoid a violent murder, choosing instead to orchestrate something more elegant. She soared into the sky, asking Poro to wait a little longer. Kamui joked that if she did kill him, he would return as an angel. Their love carried a peculiar mix of obsession and sincerity, odd yet genuine. Yuta agreed, quietly acknowledging that this angelic woman was nothing short of terrifying. Frustration simmered in Nana's eyes. If it weren't for Ruika, her ambitions would have become reality long ago. Yet the absurdity gnawed at her. How could talk of marriage even begin when the intent was to kill her husband? Lost in thought, she considered that everything might work out fine with someone strong like Ruika. Then she made an unexpected suggestion. Why not sleep with her brother instead? At that, Ruika immediately protested, loudly declaring she wanted nothing to do with that celestial fool. Noticing that the boys were still seated, Nana realized they needed to hurry while there were still spots left. She grabbed Poro by the hand, offered a sweet smile, and explained they had just been exchanging a few words. Turning back to the others, she challenged them, openly inviting anyone brave enough to try to stop her. Yet deep down, she trusted that none of them truly possessed the strength to succeed. A single glance from Poro was all it took for Nana to remind them that their entire conversation was to remain confidential. Any slip, and she threatened to silence them herself. After that, Poro couldn't even grasp why he felt so miserable, as if everything he touched slipped right through his fingers. Not a single bullet found its mark. Yuta suggested surrendering without hesitation. The bullets piled up together, and Poro struggled to comprehend how such a thing could even happen. Nanny hesitated when he offered her a turn, certain that if he had failed, her chances were even slimmer. Still, she gathered her courage and struck the balls with all her strength. The strike was so powerful that the ball soared out of the field and began ricocheting wildly around the entire hall. The bullets flew straight toward Poro, but Ruika acted in an instant. Tossing her club forward, she skewered the projectiles as easily as threading meat onto a skewer. Shock rippled through the group as Nana shattered every ball with a single swift strike. Yuta's gaze drifted toward the wall where Ruika's cue had embedded the balls like nails driven deep. This was no game. This was a fierce contest. Yet things were only just getting started. The girls competed in everything: darts, roller skating, soccer, baseball. Their contests always escalated into fierce battles. 5 hours later, they started their tennis match. Exhausted, Nana wiped the sweat from her brow and announced, "If I lose here, I'll accept defeat with dignity." That remark lit a fire in Ruika, whose anger grew beyond measure. Massive wings unfurled from Nani's shoulder blades, signaling that the time for games had ended. She was ready to enter a real battle now. With incredible speed, she hurled the ball directly at Poro. Ruika barely registered what happened before the ball struck the hero from the side. Poro glanced back in terror, his heart pounding. Nana simply smiled, her voice calm as she spoke. She revealed herself as the second strongest in the sky, explaining that her strike had been filled with love. For Nana, Ruika's brief hesitation provided more than enough opportunity. Knowing that Poro was the foremost among the demons, she resolved to throw 2 more balls. Just then, Ruika stepped in her way, poised to respond. A playful smile danced on Nana's lips as she remarked, "You're being foolish. All you need is a strong child, not to gamble with your own life." Yet a new fire kindled within Ruika, her resolve bursting into flame. Her face flushed a deep red as she declared that strength or lineage meant nothing to her. All that mattered was her love for Poro. Fists clenched with fiery resolve, she stood her ground. Unconsciousness claimed Ruika, and when her eyes fluttered open again, Poro stood before her. He explained that exhaustion had forced her to faint. If he hadn't intervened and halted everything, the consequences could have been far more serious. A wave of fear swept over Ruika as she realized she had used far too much magic. Meanwhile, Nana had simply gone home without a word. Before leaving, though, she had left behind a message for Ruika. Doubt shadowed her heart at the idea of a demon understanding love. She implored Ruiku to cherish the connection they shared. For now, Nana resolved to retreat, though with no intentions of making her departure permanent. She had vowed to return, but for now, her request was simple. She wanted Ruiku to stand by Poro. Despite her words, she still had not grasped what all of this truly meant. The words she had shouted never reached Poro's ears, his thoughts a tangled confusion. Ruika, flustered, insisted she had said nothing at all. Understanding dawned on Yuta, who simply offered a quiet smile. Although Ruika still harbored resentment towards Nana, the girl managed to surprise her, even as an adversary. A new student arrived at school, Shura Kami, also known as Nana. Ruika's anger flared. No one had warned her it would be today. Nana simply shrugged, denying she had ever said anything about it. Ruika clenched her fists, struggling to contain her frustration. Meanwhile, Poro stumbled into yet another of Kamui's pranks. While brushing his teeth, Kamui had stamped a magical seal on him. This demonic mark sealed away Poro's powers, leaving him no different from an ordinary human. Oblivious to the cause, Poro remained completely unaware of what had happened. Out of nowhere, Kamui appeared and stuck a strange object onto someone's forehead. No matter how hard they tried, it wouldn't come off. With a mysterious air, Kamui explained that the mark absorbs powers. It can be removed, he added, but only in the next chapter. Frustrated beyond words, Poro couldn't hold back and punched him. The agony was overwhelming. Kamui's warning echoed in his mind, reminding him that an ordinary person striking a god might shatter their own hand. For the first time in 100 years, Poro truly experienced pain and stared at his hand in disbelief. With a playful wink, Kamui remarked, "I hope you enjoyed the joke. I crafted it with care." Then he vanished, but not before glancing back from the doorway. Poro glanced at the clock, realizing that with his body now just like any ordinary person's, there was no time to waste. Toast clenched between his teeth, he dashed outside as Yuta's father called after him with a wish for a safe journey. In the past, reaching his destination took only 3 seconds in flight, but now Yuta had already gained the lead. Racing toward the station, Poro suddenly found himself struck by a girl on a bicycle who couldn't brake in time. The collision sent him tumbling several meters away. The girl apologized and asked if he was all right. Only now did Poro begin to grasp what had happened. For the first time, his body, his reflexes, and all his senses felt completely human. What once felt trivial, sidestepping a train as easily as stepping over an ant, now demanded real effort. Even a simple bicycle appeared as daunting as a tank. Until now, the fragility of the human body had never crossed his mind. The girl suggested calling an ambulance, yet Poro declined. In that moment, he realized carelessness could quickly become fatal. Kamui had landed him in serious trouble, but a spark of an idea hinted at a possible escape. As he continued on his way, thoughts swirling in his mind, a sudden awareness struck him. His breathing had become rapid, as if he had just finished running a marathon. Waiting for his transfer at the station, he stood uncertain of which direction to take. The surroundings brought to mind the sea of withering flowers, a desolate place from the realm of demons. Rush hour pressed in from all directions, trapping Poro so tightly he couldn't even turn around. The swarming crowd felt like the crushing grip of some giant beast of the economy. At first, the gravity of the human world fascinated him, but now doubts began to creep in. Everything turned out to be far more complicated than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Nana apologized once more for causing trouble for her brother. Determined to shoulder the responsibility, she even readied her sword. Ruika guessed that another slap was imminent, but Nana admitted with a hint of embarrassment that she had forgotten everything. With a weary sigh, she confessed, "Marriage no longer has any meaning in this situation." Anger flared in Ruika's eyes as she demanded, "What did you just say?" Poro echoed the sentiment, explaining that marriage was no longer an option for him now that his strength had vanished. Ruika longed to reach out and confess, her heart whispering, "I love you just as you are." Embarrassment, however, held her back. Meanwhile, Nana offered only a gentle smile. The concept of a demonic seal reached Yuta's ears for the very first time. Nana speculated that perhaps someone among the people could offer a clue, but Yuta remained at a loss, unable to provide any answers. Suddenly, a memory from human fairy tales flickered in Poro's mind. To break a curse, a kiss from a beloved is needed. A spark of hope brightened his face. With luck, perhaps a battle could be avoided altogether. 2 eerie girls emerged in front of him. Ruika saw this as the perfect chance to test her kiss method. Meanwhile, Nana smiled, claiming her kiss would be so hot it could stop a heart. Poro bolted away at full speed, chased by the determined girls. They insisted on claiming their kisses, while he shouted over his shoulder that they were just going to eat him alive. At last he managed to escape into the city. Tension immediately flared among the girls. Ruika reproached, blaming the loss on her companion. Nana mocked, accusing her of just wanting his kiss. Meanwhile, Poro darted around a corner and slipped into the nearest building he could find. Choosing caution, he decided to wait. Suddenly, a voice sounded behind him. A young woman greeted him warmly and offered help, saying that if he hadn't found a seat, together they could look for a table. Glancing over his shoulder, a cafe came into view. Patrons lingered at their tables, an atmosphere both familiar and comforting. Memories surfaced. He recalled reading about places like this in books. A gentle smile spread across the girl's face as she explained the day's specials. Free nuts and syrup came with every cup of tea. The menu also featured low-calorie cookies, frappuccinos, and an orange macchiato topped with sauces. For anyone bringing their own cup, a 10% discount awaited. To Poro, her words sounded less like a promotion and more like the chanting of a magic spell. The waitress politely suggested that Poro take his time before quietly departing. Settling into his seat, he cast a sorrowful glance around the room. Simply placing an order in this unfamiliar body felt like an ordeal. Everything in the world seemed foreign. Eager for a brief moment of rest, he settled down. Suddenly, a group of local boys approached, having noticed his foreign appearance and eager to amuse themselves at his expense. They dragged him out of the establishment like a helpless child and laughed, thanking him mockingly for the money. One of them spotted something hidden beneath his jacket, Poro's journal. Snatching it away, he tossed it to the ground and pressed his foot onto it. Another commented that Poro's wallet was nothing more than garbage. With his head bowed, Poro found no comfort in either world. No matter how much he despised the realm of demons, the human world appeared just as repulsive. Every revelation from the day left a bitter taste in his soul. A keen awareness of his own shortcomings lingered in his mind, yet faith in others remained unwavering. Perhaps the life of an exchange student was exactly what he needed now. Reaching for his diary, he was suddenly interrupted by a commanding voice that thundered through the room. "Do not set foot on what is precious to my friend." With swift determination, Utah knocked the gang leader off his feet and firmly forbade anyone from touching Poro's belongings. A warm smile spread across his face as he turned to Poro, apologizing for keeping him waiting so long. The force of his blow had been so immense that the rest of the boys had been knocked to the ground. Poro gazed at his friend, astonished. Utah retrieved the crumpled diary and handed it back to Poro, just in time to save it from being destroyed. The real story had only just begun. A gaping black void yawned open in the sky, unleashing a torrent of demons into the world below. Word had already spread among them that the prince was no longer powerful. Each demon was now driven by the same ambition, to seize the throne by ending the prince's life. Yuta shouted, declaring that if they were here, he would never hand over Poro. Watching him, Poro thought to himself how mad this all seemed. Humans stand little chance against demons. Yet Utah's only reply was calm and direct. "I'm no fool." Victory was never his intention. His only goal was to shield his friend. The demons ordered him to leave, yet Utah met their command with calm defiance, remarking they were simply too tall. All his life, Poro had longed for the warmth of a heart filled with unwavering faith, something that neither strength nor magic could ever conquer. With a fierce strike to the earth, Poro vented his frustration. Embarrassment burned inside him for surrendering so easily. A deep longing for strength filled his heart, the kind of power that would let him protect those around him. At that moment, the seal on his forehead began to crack. The demons drew closer, shouting for the prince to prepare himself. Suddenly, the world stood still. From Poro, a blinding light burst forth, and in his hand appeared a demonic arm. Poro underwent a transformation, his eyes blazing with fury. When they harmed his friend, they made a grave mistake. In his hands, a powerful surge of energy began to form. A surge of power swept the demons away in an instant. Awe filled Utah as he took in the sight. Far above, Kamui watched from the sky, laughter escaping his lips. The spectacle pleased him immensely. Although Poro held himself back, sheer force of will shattered the seal. His old, ancient demonic nature stirred awake once more. Interestingly enough, an ordinary household item like vinegar could break the seal. Yet, no one would have ever imagined that something made by humans could dispel demonic magic. Poro managed to break through without any hints from Kamui. Now the god paused, scheming his next bit of mischief. Meanwhile, the sky was once again split open by Poro's demonic hand. Poro fell ill. Ruika, embarrassed, admitted she had witnessed everything. It was a thrilling spectacle for her, although Utah failed to grasp her excitement. Covering his face in shame, Poro wished he could disappear entirely. Meanwhile, Nana arrived with apples that carried a dangerously sweet scent, prompting Ruika to scold her. The hero wavered, then unleashed such an enormous sneeze that it blasted straight through the roof of the house. Set out to buy some ice cream, only to witness a peculiar incident unfold instead. A drunken student in the school uniform loomed over the battered boys. He muttered that their so-called insolence now forced him to drink from the ground. Poro immediately noticed that the uniform he wore belonged to their own school. Grabbing one of the injured by the collar, he prepared to land a punch. At that moment, Poro stopped his fist mid-swing. The boy shouted for him to stay out of it, but Poro calmly replied that smoking, drinking, and picking fights would only lead to trouble. In a sudden burst of anger, the boy grabbed Poro's arm and squeezed it with all his might. Claiming to possess the strongest skull in the world, he slammed his head straight into Poro. And with that, he collapsed, completely unconscious. Poro could only sigh and remark, "I did warn you. No surprise there, considering he possesses the toughest skull among all the demons." Time passed. The battered boy slowly regained consciousness and found Poro sitting beside him. The hero offered a gentle smile and remarked that he had managed to get some rest. Poro went to fetch some water, but before he could, the boy bowed politely. Upon hearing that Poro possessed extraordinary strength, he eagerly asked to become his disciple. The hero could not hide his astonishment. The next day, whispers about the new student, known as the demon, filled the halls. Many students regarded him with fear. Rumors spread quickly, painting him as a man of cruelty. Always in the throes of conflict, the brute never rests. Truly, it would have been wiser to leave him be. A boy passing by called Poro a little brat, but the instant Kimura fixed his gaze on him, the whole group scattered and ran off. Poro had insisted on not being called a teacher, claiming he, too, still had much to learn from others. Yet Kimura could not accept this. Anyone capable of defeating him with a single blow clearly deserved the title of master. From that moment, Kimura resolved to remain at his side. Poro couldn't comprehend why strength held such a powerful grip over him. After all, there was love and friendship as well. Kimura paused for a moment, considering the question, but finally answered with quiet certainty. Being the strongest simply delighted him. Kimura's smile sent a chill down Poro's spine. It struck him that even in the world of humans, values could resemble those of demons. The world was intricate, and at times, overwhelmingly so. Nearby, a girl stood by a tree, pleading with a cat to be careful as it clung to a branch, unable to climb down. With effortless strength, Poro uprooted the entire tree and tilted it gently, creating an easy path for the frightened cat to leap down to safety, all while the astonished girl looked on. Relief flooded the girl's face upon seeing Ryan the cat unharmed, and she scooped him into a gentle embrace. Meanwhile, Poro discreetly restored the tree to its original spot, casting quick glances around to ensure no one witnessed the act. Just then, a familiar voice rang out as Kimura once again called for his teacher. Kimura tried to imitate what he had seen and move the tree, but his strength failed him. To anyone watching, he seemed completely out of his mind. The little girl thanked Poro and handed a small gift to both him and Kimura. Inside, a simple candy heart awaited. Delight lit up Kimura's face. Poro suggested moving on to the second round of training, and Kimura immediately agreed. All the while, a shadowy group kept a quiet watch from behind, their interest piqued but their presence unnoticed. Kimura had no idea what sort of training the teacher would invent, but Poro had made up his mind. Only kind-hearted lessons would do. In the subway, he gently lifted the old man into his arms and announced that their new exercise would involve holding others as if they were dumbbells. The passengers watched them with curious eyes. The next challenge involved balancing along the edge of the roof. In that intense moment, the man gripped by Poro became convinced that his final moments had arrived. Afterward, they dashed into the burning buildings to rescue the wounded. In the world of humans, a different kind of strength is valued. Weary from their efforts, the boys settled onto a bench to catch their breath. Poro praised Kimura for their hard work that day. Though breathing heavily, Kimura replied with determination that he would do anything to become stronger. Taking a candy from the girl, he suddenly sensed an unfamiliar warmth stirring inside him. The people they had just saved approached with heartfelt gratitude, offering their thanks. Kimura found himself at a loss, unsure how to respond. Poro inquired about what had happened and reached to unwrap the candy, but it slipped right through his fingers. Racing after her, Kimura finished his lollipop. Just then, a stranger approached him. Poro returned, dust clinging to his candy, and smiled, murmuring that it tasted good. By then, however, Kimura had already left the bench. In the narrow alley, the boys kept striking Kimura repeatedly. One boy praised his friend, telling him he had landed a perfect hit. His friend grinned back and asked if he should go for another round. The truth came to light. Kimura revealed as a demon, his weakness uncovered. In Poro's arms rested the kitten he had rescued. One of them pressed a knife against the animal. Kimura pleaded, his voice steady, asking them to spare the creature and offering himself instead, willing to endure 100 blows if that was their price. Rising to his feet, he met their gaze with unwavering resolve. The leader drew closer. Yet Kimura responded with a calm smile. Fear of a beating did not shake him. The memory of that girl's sincere smile lingered in his mind, giving him the courage to stand firm. As the blow landed, Poro emerged and caught the bat with his bare hand. The bat began to dissolve in his grasp. In a gentle tone, he remarked that even a hero sometimes needs a teacher's guidance. With a single sharp glance, he froze all 3 attackers in place. With a gentle squeeze, the bead transformed into a tiny black sphere. The boys screamed and bolted, shouting that they had seen a real demon. Kimura swayed unsteadily, but Poro caught him just in time. Poro assured Kimura that it took incredible strength to endure what he had just faced. Later, the girl was found sitting on a bench, tears streaming down her face. Kimura gently offered her the kitten and softly assured her that it had been returned. The girl hugged the kitten tightly, holding her beloved pet close. Kimura gently asked her to never lose her cherished companion again. Without warning, she wrapped Kimura in a grateful hug, her thanks unaffected by the bruises he bore. Startled, Kimura glanced at Poro in confusion, a silent nod betraying his surprise. With a sly wink from Poro, Kimura held his head high and answered with quiet confidence, "Because I am strong." From that moment on, he no longer jostled through the crowd. He had discovered that true strength was no longer measured by fists. Night cloaked the street as shouts pierced the silence. A woman, paralyzed by terror, collapsed before a monstrous figure. Blood streaked down her arm, where a pentagram bearing the number 23 was carved into her flesh. News of a maniac on the loose quickly swept through the school. The victims included an English teacher and an elderly man who sold flowers. Both managed to survive, yet the motive behind these attacks remained a mystery. Poro shuddered, shaken by the sheer brutality of it all. A dull ache settled in his chest as he realized he would no longer cross paths with these people on his way to school. Kimura's anger simmered. Vowing silently, he refused to forgive anyone who would harm women and the elderly. Kimura burned with a desire to deal with the culprit himself. Yet Poro and Utah refused to condone violence. Frustration simmered inside Kimura as he muttered that further discussion was pointless. Kimura shot Utah a look full of contempt, disgusted that such a shameless person dared address their teacher by name. He threatened to turn Utah's face into a fried egg. Utah accepted the challenge. Confident victory was within his grasp. Kimura, set out to prove himself as the strongest in the world. Ruika cheered on the fight, while Nana placed her bet 9 out of 10 on Kimura. Kimura raised his fist toward the sky and declared Ruika to be his goddess. Flustered, her cheeks reddened as she protested for him to stop. Kimura believed that a teacher's bride should possess the grace of a goddess. Ruika found herself at a loss for words, uncertain how to respond. Meanwhile, Nana gently reminded everyone that Poro had once been hers. Kimura remarked that he had already seen the teacher and that was enough for him. Without another word, he left. Rumors began to swirl through the school, whispers claiming that Kirakami had formed a connection with a demon. A month had slipped by since Poro's arrival. Anxieties about how things might unfold had once weighed on him, but now his days brimmed with discoveries. Before he could process this newfound perspective, shouts suddenly erupted from the classroom. Everyone rushed outside, where an ambulance crew was already on duty nearby. Another seizure had struck in broad daylight, unseen by any witnesses. The victim was Mrs. Miyazawa from the library, making her the third person attacked, all happening right near the school. The same pentagram appeared, but this time the number 19 was carved into the hand. It looked like a message. Poro studied the photos of the victims displayed on the boy's phone beside him. Surprise flickered across his face as he noticed the photos of the victims. Among them, the boy with the eye patch recognized Poro from 5th grade. The hero could not recognize the stranger, but before he had time to react, the newcomer seized his hands and declared, "We've met at just the right moment." Introducing himself as Hikaru Tsukumo, the vice president of the journalism club, he invited the heroes to join him in the clubroom. Curiosity and surprise guided them as they followed after him. Sensing that something was amiss, journalist Hikaru launched his investigation. He revealed photographs of the victims, their palms marked with a carved pentagram and a number. Most likely, the culprit was counting down, but the reason behind the decreasing numbers remained a mystery. Hikaru searched desperately for any clue that could reveal the meaning behind this ominous sign. Clutching his phone tightly, he vowed to unmask the culprit for the sake of journalism and claim the position of club president. Despite carrying his own intentions, he bowed respectfully to Poro and requested assistance. Although confusion lingered over why he had been chosen, Hikaru already held the answer. Poro earned a reputation as the most formidable thief, someone even people like Yuta choose to follow. As long as Poro was around, Hikaru could rest without worry. The situation left Poro unsettled, though Yuta found it rather impressive. Hikaru apologized, explaining that the article had only mentioned a demon descending to Earth. Poro, however, could not hide his indignation and insisted that such a headline ruined everything. The journalist gathered everyone to begin the investigation. Suddenly, Poro's phone rang. The call came from the hospital suspended between life and death, and in the logbook, they wrote down Kirakami's number. Every victim of the attack had been admitted to this hospital. Not a single one had regained consciousness yet. Another one was discovered. Kimura Dono. Blood stained his palm, where the number 15 was marked. The shock rippled through everyone present. None could fathom how Kimura had lost. The group gathered to visit him, with Ruika arriving bearing homemade food. Meanwhile, Poro detected lingering traces of magic on the pentagram. The 5-pointed star signifies a demonic pentagram. Symbols like these appeared in rituals and served as marks upon chosen victims. The true meaning behind the numbers remained a mystery. Perhaps a demon orchestrated everything from the shadows. Yet the purpose behind these attacks on people was still unclear. A sudden memory flashed through Poro's mind, stirring an urgent sense that action could wait no longer. Meanwhile, in a shadowy alley, Nana came face to face with a clawed creature whose menacing smile promised nothing but trouble. Awaiting his arrival, she unfurled her wings and declared with quiet strength that she would not become his next victim. Unleashing her celestial power, Angelizia prepared to shatter his wicked scheme. The boys set out to search for her. Hikaru guessed she had simply left on her own. However, Poro sensed something was wrong. Poro's fears came true when Nanu was discovered unconscious, a pentagram etched with the number 12 marking her palm. Desperation filled Poro as he pleaded for her to wake. It seemed impossible for anyone to have defeated the angel who stood just below God. Poro trembled, unable to imagine a force powerful enough to accomplish such a feat. In the palm of Nana's hand, Poro noticed a message, her final communication. It pointed him towards the diary. The meaning remained unclear to him at first, until the truth finally revealed itself. Offering a word of thanks to Nana, he opened his diary and slowly flipped through its pages. Hikaru pored over her notes with growing urgency, his eyes scanning every line for hidden clues. As he meticulously checked each number, a realization dawned on him. There was a deliberate pattern woven through it all. Poro paused on page 20, and his face suddenly lost all color. The answer lay right before his eyes. The numbers marked on the victim's hands matched the page numbers in his diary, each corresponding to an entry where he had described his encounters with them. The killer targeted people in the reverse order that Poirot had written about them. Yet what purpose could lie behind such actions? What meaning could be found in this pattern? Eager to uncover what awaited him next, the hero quickly checked the previous entry to find out who would be called upon after him. Terror rooted him to the spot as his eyes caught a chilling entry. There, in the diary before Nana, Ruika's name appeared. At that moment, Ruika sat by Kimura's bedside, lost in boredom, and musing that Poro's worries about Nana were completely unfounded. She remained oblivious as a twisted, blackened claw crept silently toward the window. From the shattered glass emerged a monstrous figure. A massive, grotesque creature slipped silently into the room. With a swift gesture, Ruika signaled the others to step back and not disturb the wounded. Without hesitation, she unleashed a surge of flames toward her target. The creature crashed through the window, but Ruika sprang after it, unleashing another burst of fire. She had never encountered demons of this kind before. Forcing the creature into the ground, she did her best to limit the destruction. Yet instinct told her this effort would not be enough. Such a being would not perish so easily. Nani's words surfaced in her mind, reminding her that the attacker followed the instructions laid out in the Poro diary. Rika couldn't explain how she knew, but Nana confessed. She had read every single word in the diary. The thought unsettled and disgusted Ruika. As tension thickened between them, Ruika asserted herself, declaring that she was his fiancée, not Nana. The truth became undeniable. The real target had always been Poro. Each victim was chosen because of their connection to him. Nana urged Ruika to remain silent, certain that exposing the truth would only cause more pain. Uncertain of who orchestrated these events, she nevertheless saw an opportunity for revenge. Determined, she went to inspect each wounded individual, convey her intentions, and search for the truth hidden among them. Ruika wondered aloud why Nana would share anything with her, given how much she disliked her. Nana made no effort to deny it. Her contempt ran deep for this crude, pathetic girl. She even recalled the time Ruika had licked the cake wrapper. Embarrassment flooded Ruika's face, turning her cheeks red. Yet there is one thing that unites them, their shared affection for Poro-sama. Because of this bond, Nana feels safe enough to entrust her with a secret. Casting her gaze at the creature, Ruika can't help but admit to herself that it looks quite pitiful. Facing her in battle proved unexpectedly challenging. Though her magic appeared feeble and her strength no greater than average, there was a sense that this was merely the surface. Something far more menacing seemed to lurk beneath her unassuming exterior. Ruika fought fiercely, pushing herself to the limit against the creature, unable to understand how Nana could have lost to such a feeble opponent. Poro and his friends burst into the room only to find they had arrived too late. Relief passed through the group as they saw that everyone was unharmed, yet all eyes were fixed on the gaping hole in the wall. Hikaru reasoned that the monster had targeted Ruika just as it intended. The sheer force behind the blow had the power to shatter a wall. A lingering trace of Ruika's magic brushed against Poro's senses, distant, yet unmistakably familiar. He realized she had moved the battle far from the village, keeping Kimura out of harm's way. Like a flash of lightning, he tore through the crowded corridor. There was no time for thought, only swift action. The others barely had time to glance around before Poro had vanished. It became clear that their hero had once again slipped away without a word. Meanwhile, Ruika continued to hold back the monstrous creature, her confusion growing as its resilience defied all understanding. Exhausted and drained of nearly all her magic, she saw that her efforts had left not even a scorch mark. Any other demon would have been destroyed by now. A monstrous creature unleashed twisting grapevines that quickly coiled around the girl's body. In that moment, it became clear to her that she had fallen into a trap. Ruika's entire body dimmed as her magic faded away and the flames vanished. Her strength had been completely spent. The monster raised its spear, aiming to impale her. Ruika recalled Nana's words, a fierce resolve welling up inside her. Giving up was never an option. Grasping the monster's head, she declared her vengeance would not vanish unheard. Duhu's surge of power shattered the silence. A blinding flash erupted, followed by a thunderous explosion. The monstrous creature crashed to the ground, the shard of the spear still jutting out from its eye. With a surge of hatred, she tore out the shard and shouted across to her defeated enemy. A gnawing hunger unsettled her, especially in the presence of such a wretch. Yet it seemed he resorted to the same technique he had used against Nana. Despite that, victory belonged to her. Relief briefly brightened her face, only for a sudden awareness of someone lurking behind to overshadow it. Amazement lingered as the creature continued to move even after she had torn off its head. All she managed to glimpse were the gleaming spikes and the distant shout of Poro, ordering the creature to keep its claws away from his bride. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before her, unfurled his demonic aura, and halted the gruesome flow of blood. Turning back to her, he apologized for being late and gently asked how she was feeling. Ruika offered a faint smile, confessing she thought she was on the verge of death. Poro, however, urged her to pull herself together. Before he could utter a single word, strange circles materialized around him, and in an instant, everything transformed. Strange objects spilled out from the creature's insides. Among the jumble, Ruika's attention caught on something out of the ordinary. The small sphere was just about to touch the ground, when Ruika snatched it from the air in a swift motion. With a closer look, she realized it was an eye, though unlike any ordinary one. Poro suspected it belonged to some monstrous creature, but Ruika referred to it as a divine tool, an instrument once wielded by exorcists. Swords like these rival the very weapons wielded by Poro himself. Their existence often slips beneath notice, for among humans there are rare individuals whose skills stand equal to those of demons. Exorcists never wield magic directly. Instead, they channel it through needles, cards, or various objects. It is likely that this creature is nothing more than a puppet, manipulated by the real culprit from the shadows. In other words, humans are the true culprits. A century ago, demons had already crossed paths with exorcists. Ruika even had an acquaintance from that world. The criminal, after implanting the demon's eye, gained the ability to watch them constantly. Should he have worn it himself, that would mean he knew how to conceal its presence. A chilling realization gripped Poro as he gazed at the monster. In that moment, an unexpected truth struck him to the core. At that very moment, realization struck the criminal. The heroes were on the verge of uncovering the truth. The time to act had finally arrived. Everything unfolded according to plan. Without any challenges, life would have felt dull. Meticulously, he carved a pentagram into the bound Utah's arm as Utah struggled to call for help. Everything unfolded as planned. By now, even Hikaru would have found it impossible to intervene. The maniac finished his drawing, etching a number into the skin. In a sudden burst of motion, Poro sprang to his feet, sensing that Utah was in danger. Ruika offered to go with him, but he refused. She had already exhausted too much of her strength. Allowing her to endanger her life once more was unthinkable, especially when the opponent surpassed any demon in strength. She needed rest and time to assess the lingering effects of the eye's power. A powerful aura swept over Poro, instantly familiar and unmistakable. Its origin was clear. It radiated from Hikaru. Realizing where they were, Poro shot forward like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he stood face to face with Hikaru, who held the bound Yuta firmly in his grasp. A sinister smile crept across Hikaru's face, as if the demon world's threshold held no surprises for him. With no intention of listening, Poro lunged forward, launching his attack. An invisible barrier halted his advance. Hikaru let out a sigh, resigned to the fact that he couldn't even finish his sentence. Resting his hand gently on Yuti's head, he invited Poro to listen to what he had to say. After all, facing death without knowing the reason was a fate no one desired. Introducing himself as nothing more than an ordinary exorcist, he suspected that his fiery companion, Ruika, had likely revealed everything already. Exorcists were entrusted with a single purpose: to safeguard humanity and eradicate demons. Truth be told, a simple pleasure fueled him most. Slaying demons and causing pain brought a deep, genuine satisfaction. Life without demons felt far more pleasant. Hikaru confessed with satisfaction, and, as he added, it made for an unexpectedly rewarding hobby. Once, he could only dream of defeating the mightiest demon. Yet, a simple kill now struck him as far too ordinary. So the decision was made to begin with pain. Pain inflicted upon those Poro cherished most. This, he believed, was a stroke of true genius. Poros allowed him to draw nearer, while Hikaru quietly observed. The hero's realization began to dawn, growing steadily as he recognized that his loved ones were the true targets. The greatest satisfaction came from witnessing Poro's face clouded with confusion. The sight of that bewildered expression was something he longed to see once more. Pressing a knife to Yuta's throat, the threat became deadly real. Yet, in that tense moment, Poro erupted in fury and launched an attack. The barrier shattered, and sharp fragments drove themselves into Poro's arm. Hikaru had been clear. No demon would break through his barrier. Yet sharp shards pierced through Poro's body, driving deep all the way up to his head. To combat the demons, humanity forged weapons capable of standing against them, knowing that ordinary means were powerless without magic. Centuries of human hatred built up over thousands of years have given rise to self-defense, rituals, and spells. At that moment, Hikaru seized his chance, grabbing Poro by the hair and lifting his head. A sly smile played on Hikaru's lips as he remarked that it was all nothing more than a game for his own amusement. Before leaving, he suggested recalling the faces of everyone in the diary. This would be the final memory before death. A sudden burst of brilliant light ignited before Hikaru's eyes. Ruika emerged, launching fiery pillars at the exorcist. Hikaru braced himself, shielding against the assault, irritation flaring at her sudden interference. Fury consumed her. No one had the right to treat her husband that way. Poro shouted out, urging her to run, warning that he was far too powerful. Hikaru simply shrugged, confident that any fire could be extinguished. With a calm, unfeeling expression, he drove his spear of light straight through her body. A searing pain twisted Ruika's face as she slipped into unconsciousness. A small smile played on Hikaru's lips, unfazed by such a challenge. For him, 10th-level magic was nothing out of the ordinary. Even 8 holes in his heart seemed trivial. To ensure Yuta wouldn't interfere, Hikaru placed a charm on him, lulling him into a deep sleep. A quiet smile played on Hikaru's lips, signaling that everything was just beginning. Meanwhile, Poro stood paralyzed by shock, unable to comprehend the possibility of Ruika's death. Unconsciousness claimed the hero, and sleep overcame him. A surge of satisfaction washed over Hikaru at the sight. At last, the hero had finally reached his breaking point. Poro now lay at the heart of the pentagram. Heat radiated from his hand, and only after a moment did he notice the fresh cut across his palm. The abandoned hospital mirrored the one where the victims had once stayed. Hikaru had prepared everything in advance. A pentagram marked with the number 0 had been drawn using his blood. This very seal awakened genuine magic. Victims, numbers, pages, each detail pointed toward the awakening of power. Poro was destined to become the key. The other victims had served only as a smokescreen. The true target stood before them. Tension sent a ringing noise through the hero's ears. Demonic wings unfurled from his back, while spiked horns emerged on his head. A surge of power swept over his body. The awakening had reached its completion. The same form Poro once held back now emerged, no longer restrained. Nothing remained that could halt his advance. In this form, the power to level a city, or even erase the world, rested within his grasp. Hikaru understood this all too well. According to his plan, Poro was destined to destroy everything he cherished and, unable to bear the weight of his guilt, eventually beg for death himself. Such was his vision of the perfect tragedy. As the hero teetered on the edge of losing himself completely, Yuta awoke. His eyes fell upon his friend, who had been transformed into a monster. Poro pleaded with Hikaru to halt the ritual, but Hikaru only pressed his foot down on Poro's head, forcing him into the ground in a display of utter humiliation. Hikaru insisted that awakened demons posed a threat to all existence, leaving Poro with no place left in the world of humans. According to Hikaru, diaries, friendships, and emotions amounted to nothing more than a pointless game. At last, Poro snapped. His hand twisted into a beast's claw, while his whole body shrouded itself in sinister black demonic flames. Hikaru braced for Poro to unleash devastation upon everything nearby, yet the hero unexpectedly turned that power inward, directing it against the exorcist himself. The amulet stood no chance. Poro wiped them out instantly, denying them even a moment to activate. The hero's strike forced Hikaru deep into the rooftop. A faint smile crossed Hikaru's lips. This was his strongest defense, yet it proved useless. In the aftermath, Hikaru offered Poro nothing but a wish for endless suffering. A fragile plea escaped from the crowd, begging him to stop, yet Poro had already slipped beyond the reach of those desperate words. Just as the demon prepared to unleash utter destruction, Kimura leapt forward, a former student of Poro's, driven by determination. A gentle reminder escaped his lips, reminding the teacher that strength was not everything. Kimura's swift recovery left Yuta quietly amazed. With the ritual's sacrifice already complete, Kimura found himself able to awaken. The other friends soon regained consciousness. Ruika hurled a blazing lasso at Poro, while Nona tried to restrain him with the chains of insatiable hunger. Ruika shouted that she would never love a monster consumed by power and demanded that he come to his senses. Meanwhile, Nona smiled, certain that only she held the right to end his life. Amazement swept through the crowd as the fire demon remained upright despite such severe wounds. Ruika gently reminded Nona of the one who had healed her, but Nona replied with the calm simplicity that she had only been asleep. Should Poro completely lose control, the world will be doomed. Desperation fills the air as they hurry to devise a plan. Too late. Poro unleashed another surge of power. The blast resounded and the ground shuddered beneath their feet. Everyone collapsed. Surveying the battered bodies scattered around him, Hikaru allowed himself a faint, amused smile. Humans truly were pitiable creatures. Just as his monstrous hand reached out toward them, Yuta halted him by holding out the diary. Locking eyes with his friend, he calmly said, "Let's stop here." Poro meticulously maintained his diary, a clear sign of his good nature, something everyone recognized. Everyone fought not against him, but on his behalf. Yuta admitted that knowing Poro existed in this world brought him true happiness. Hikaru responded with a faint smile, as if to say it was futile. Poro was no longer human, and nothing could stop him now. The memory returned to Yuta. Poro had entered the human world not in pursuit of power, but in search of understanding. Extending a hand, Yuta offered him the diary. The demon's eyes quivered, and almost without thinking, a hand reached for the diary. A gentle smile touched Yuta's lips as he whispered quietly, "Time to go home." Clarity returned to the hero at last. A gentle smile touched his lips as he remembered the name he once wished to call himself, Dona. Without warning, Hikaru seized a knife and pressed it against Yuta's throat, his movements sharp and urgent. The air grew tense, each heartbeat heavy with the risk that if Poro lost control once more, disaster would follow. A magic circle once drawn remains useful for countless rituals and incantations. Even Hikaru possessed a touch of magic, though it barely amounted to more than a whisper. The ritual he performed drained Poro time after time. Sooner or later, the strain would become too much for his body to endure. Hikaru longed to keep playing, but nothing remained for him to enjoy. At that moment, Poro unleashed his signature move, a blow so powerful it swept away magic and tricks alike. Hikaru chuckled, refusing to believe in defeat. But eventually, he collapsed, quietly acknowledging the absurdity of it all in his own way. Poro paid no heed. He issued a warning that from now on, no one would be allowed to lay a hand on those he held dear. With that, I vowed it would never happen again. Tears streamed down his face, as though the weight of his actions crushed him into a child once more. He begged forgiveness for striking Yuta. Yet, his friend gently urged him not to dwell in guilt. With those words, the bloody tale drew to a quiet close. From that moment on, Hikaru vanished without a trace, as if erased from existence. Poro truly believed their paths would never cross again. As time passed, everyone recovered and the familiar rhythms of school life resumed. Kimura grew increasingly fascinated with Poro, admiring the impressive shape of his horns. Yuta watched with a mix of disbelief and awe, while Ruika's thoughts wandered to the dream of embracing a demon. Meanwhile, Nona imagined how she might defeat him in this form. Among mortals, Toishi bore the infamous title of Dabachi, renowned as the most fearsome villain to ever walk the human world. Kei Kimura, too, earned a name all his own, the Demon. Each stood unrivaled, legends in their own right as the mightiest among humankind. Warm-hearted and loyal, they had always stood by the protagonist as true friends. Yet today, Poro couldn't begin to fathom what was happening to them. He simply watched as they attacked the mountain of books with an oddly determined air. A headband emblazoned with certain victory was tied across Yuta's forehead. Yuta fought to stay awake, sipping a strange liquid from a bottle. Meanwhile, Kimura clenched his teeth in frustration, unable to make sense of the pages before him. Their appearance was more intimidating than usual. Poro quietly hoped they weren't angry. Yet something felt off. Their only activity had been quietly reading books. Although Yona possessed a sharp mind, drowsiness would claim him before he reached the second page. To stave off sleep, he relied on a steady stream of coffee. Akamura could hardly be called a genius. Just the sight of letters made his brain feel like it might boil over. More than once he'd been caught reading a book upside down. Poro couldn't quite grasp what compelled them. At that moment, a girl entered the classroom. Arms laden with her favorite books, she explained she couldn't carry more. They were just too heavy. Still, she promised these were the most fascinating ones. A gentle smile crossed her lips as she asked if we would read them. The boys grew animated, warmly welcoming Fujihara-senpai, while Poro simply looked on, completely clueless about her identity. Sawara promised to bring more books if these turned out to be to their liking. Tanya agreed eagerly, while the girl laughed and apologized for always talking about books. In the past, friends who shared her love for reading were nowhere to be found, so discovering them now brought her genuine happiness. She promised to await their thoughts, offered her farewell, and made her way off. Kimura and Yuta watched her leave, their eyes lingering with a touch of wistfulness. Poro doubted that they had truly fallen in love, but the boys firmly told him to keep quiet. The girl in question was Fujiwara from Class 3, known for her role as the librarian and her passion for books. Yesterday, upon seeing her in the corridor, Kimura found himself already falling for her. The horoscope had foretold an encounter that would change his destiny, although Poro insisted that such predictions only made things more complicated. The boys exaggerated, claiming they could read 100, sometimes even 1,000 pages a day. The girl listened in awe while Poro watched in quiet confusion, unable to understand the need for such tall tales. Tension flared between Kimura and Kimura as both insisted they were the one truly worthy of being with senpai. Caught in the middle, Poro found himself at a loss, unsure where to turn. Watching one of them faint, Poro realized in that instant the overwhelming power of love. Stepping into a bookstore with friends transforms an ordinary outing into a delightful experience. Exploring the shelves alone can be enjoyable, but sharing the adventure with good company brings a special charm. The boys could hardly stay on their feet, struggling with exhaustion as they accompanied the girl. In contrast, Poro showed no sign of weariness. Although Yuta and Kimura insisted on accompanying her, their knowledge of books was minimal. They turned to Poro for explanations, but even he had only a limited understanding of this world. A short distance away, some familiar troublemakers appeared. Surprise filled their faces when they realized those two not only knew how to read, but also had such a charming girl with them. Fujiwara slipped a Russian novel into Yuchi's hands, and a flush crept across his face as he realized he had crossed a line. Meanwhile, Poro's eyes caught a familiar title nestled among the books on the shelf. The masterpiece War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy features a cast of 500 characters. Poro understood well, this was a true classic. Yuta should have known this book, yet it was clear from his evasive answers that he hadn't read it. The girl, however, agreed that its central message was a strong anti-war idea. Poro found himself deeply impressed, realizing for the first time that words could possess such remarkable power. Fujiwara arrived with Kimura's favorite book, a novel by Osamu Dazai. Curious, she asked which part of the story he enjoyed the most. Beads of sweat formed on Kimura's forehead. The story drew its inspiration from ancient Greek myths and had even found its way into the school curriculum. In a moment of panic, Kimura vaguely recalled a wild cat locked in battle with demons. A laugh escaped the girl, her memory unable to recall such a moment. In that instant, Poro realized he had simply guessed, while Kimura had lied. Both boys fainted from embarrassment right at the girl's feet. Poro dragged them aside and asked Fujiwara to wait for a moment. Clearly, this world of books was not meant for them. While Poro helped his friends recover, two suspicious young men approached Fujiwara. Poro warned them that if things continued this way, the books might just destroy them. Yet Kimura remained resolute, insisting that a real man never gives up. Poro reminded everyone that they had already lost the moment they lied to her. Energy surged through Kimura as he proclaimed he was far from finished, insisting there was still strength left in him. Worry twisted through Poro, who feared that winning would only bring more trouble. Kimura, undeterred, declared that Senpai would be his, convinced he had gone too far to turn back. Poro found himself at a loss, uncertain how to handle either of them. After stepping out of the restroom, the voices of Fujiwara pleading not to be touched echoed through the hall. The boys surrounding her responded only with ridicule, intent on humiliating her further. Mockery followed her, the whispers claiming her friends, a demon and a libertine, were unfit for reading books. Their cruelty was clear. They singled her out and tormented her. Anger flared within Kimura at their humiliating remarks, but Fuji stood her ground, unshaken. Calmly, she pointed out that even if there was truth in their words, the mere desire these people showed to read held significant meaning. Delight shimmered in her eyes even at this. The reply she offered left everyone speechless, including Kimura and Yuta. One of the boys grabbed her by the wrist, calling her pretty and accusing her of neglecting people for her books. He suggested she join them for some fun instead of burying herself in reading. The girl demanded that he let her go. In that instant, Kimura and Yuta intervened, swinging their fists with force. The two bullies crashed noisily to the floor. Fuji expressed her gratitude for the help, while the boys offered their apologies to her. Their confession came quietly. Everything those boys had claimed was true. They had never actually read the books. Unfazed, the girl responded with a warm, genuine smile, remarking that it was wonderful. Now they would be loved. Emotion nearly overcame Kimura, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Yet Fuji made her terms clear. No more essays on war and peace or any book of that kind. Meanwhile, the attackers concealed themselves behind the shelves and deliberately toppled a bookcase, sending it crashing down onto Fuji. Poro swiftly caught both the girl and the shelf, neatly organizing the books into tidy stacks. He offered words of praise to the boys, commending their honesty and courage. Kimura and Yuta openly admired their teacher. Fuji was so captivated that her gaze remained fixed on Poro, unable to look away. Covering her mouth with her hands, she listened as Poro smiled warmly, expressing his relief that she was safe and well. Kimura and Yuta realized something had shifted. It became clear that Poro had won this battle not with strength, but with kindness. He offered the girl his help and gently returned the shelf to its rightful place. Later, back at Udo's home, Poro explored the computer with curiosity. Suddenly, the screen flickered to life, displaying an urgent message about a virus. Confusion settled over him as he tried to grasp how such a thing could happen from merely wandering the internet. When a button labeled "Destroy Virus" suddenly appeared on the screen, Poro acted without hesitation and pressed it. Instead, a window popped up thanking him for purchasing antivirus software for the staggering amount of 1 billion yen. The screen prompted him to transfer the money to a specified bank card. Anxiety crept up on Poro. Disbelief washed over him as the reality sank in. He had only pressed "Delete Virus." Trying to undo his purchase, he was met with a prompt directing him to call a specific number. Without hesitation, Poro dialed it. Poro dialed the VTI company's information hotline and politely explained that he had pressed the wrong button, accidentally purchased an antivirus, and now wished to cancel the transaction. The operator confirmed the cancellation, then calmly mentioned a penalty fee of 5 billion yen. Poro swallowed hard, stunned by the amount. The hero admitted he didn't have that kind of money. The operator's voice turned cold as he declared that failure to pay would count as a breach of contract. Poro pleaded for a peaceful resolution, but the other man's tone shifted, becoming abruptly harsh. A chilling voice threatened to kill him unless the payment was made. They mentioned that they already knew his name and address and would come themselves to sort everything out. What's more, the virus has already allowed them to see exactly how much money sits in his account. A spark of inspiration flickered in Poro's mind. Kimura and Yuta exchanged looks of surprise when Poro suddenly hung up the phone, and in the next instant, the building's wall erupted as the conmen crashed down onto the floor. One person stood up, expecting to see the police, but instead found himself face to face with a young demon. Poro apologized, admitting he had gotten a bit carried away and accidentally broken through the wall. With a resigned sigh, he revealed his nearly empty wallet. Yesterday's spree on games had drained his funds. He extended the last of his money toward the swindlers, promising to pay the rest later. The others, visibly trembling, simply nodded in agreement. Poro sighed, resigned to the fact that their deception had been exposed. The operator leader dropped to his knees and solemnly pledged never to act that way again. The truth emerged. Taro, just an ordinary guy, had been forced into making fake calls. Dreams of becoming a guitarist had once filled his heart, but now he found himself entangled in a web of crime. A realization settled over Taro. Escape was impossible now. Yet Poro showed no intention of finishing him off. The young man confessed that the bosses had everyone under their control by keeping all the data, making escape impossible. Poro listened sympathetically to his story. Con artists possessed great strength, though not nearly as terrifying as demons, Taro assured. Even so, Poro would still have to pay the price. At these words, the hero's tears began to flow, and in that vulnerable moment, Taro realized the so-called monster harbored a deeply compassionate heart. Poro called him a poor soul and offered a few words of sympathy. In response, Taro burst into tears, his voice trembling as he thanked Poro for understanding. The hero asserted that even those whose actions are darker than any demons will remain human as long as they speak the truth from the heart. Taro didn't understand a word, but he nodded along anyway. At that moment, the doors swung open, revealing the true boss of the gang. Wrapped in a shaggy jacket, he cradled a rare munchkin kitten in his arms. Before him stood only a trembling Taro and a stranger named Poro. When he realized the demon had vanished, a look of confusion flickered across his face. Poro stood beside him, gently stroking the cat's soft fur. With polite words, he apologized for intruding and asked if he was the person in charge here. Taro could only blink in confusion, unable to find a response. Bodo had never known a world where debts were forgiven, so Taro found the tale of the peace-loving demon utterly absurd. A sly grin played on Poro's lips as he requested a small favor, but Bodo brushed him off and coldly ordered his men to finish off the audacious intruder. The guard struck Poro on the head only to receive an equally bloody greeting in return. Takatora collapsed, unconscious. From beneath his jacket, a tiny munchkin kitten crawled out. Poro leaned in close to the little creature and quietly asked if it was all right. An eerie silence settled over the surroundings. The swindlers, struck by fear, opted to flee and hurriedly called for Bodo-san himself, a move that made Taro shiver with anxiety. With a sudden tug on Poro's shoulder, Taro's voice grew tense. "We're doomed. If we stay, they'll kill us." Still, the demon insisted on talking things through first. The fraudsters rushed to contact the head of the UKMA phone mafia. News of the botched job would likely send him into a fury. Poro suddenly blurted out his idea to speak directly with Bodo. The shock of such audacity left Taro speechless, his mind racing at the sheer madness of the proposal. The Sixers reported to the boss that their young telephone operator had brought someone who took down Takatora. As Bodo painted his nails, a sly smile crossed his lips while he gave a simple order: capture him. A public dismemberment would make for quite a spectacle. Admiring his freshly done manicure, he barely had time to react before the wall shattered and, Through the debris, Poro burst into the office. The demon addressed him politely as Mr. Bodo. The guards' attempts to restrain their guest proved futile. Bodo stared in disbelief. The doors were solid steel, yet the young man greeted him with a calm smile. Poro assured Bodo that he had only come to talk, not to kill. Relief flooded Taro, who nearly fainted from the tension. Poro intended to discuss the issue of telephone scams, yet before delving into that topic, he asked for Taro to be released. Bodo, stunned, repeated the words in disbelief. Poro nodded, understanding the boy's dream to become a guitarist. The boss considered Poro a fool for believing such tales. Bodo's answer came in the form of a bullet, fired straight at the demon's face. Without flinching, the demon caught it between his teeth. Poro spat the bullet onto the floor and declared that words are a chance, one not everyone gets. The room fell silent, faces drained of color. Bodo and his followers stared in shock at the monster before them, a creature that devoured bullets without flinching. Taro's body tensed, unease rippling through him, while Poro only offered a calm smile and suggested, "Let's make a deal." Within a few days, the police announced that the largest scam call center had been taken down. In his report, Bodo stated that some young fellow was responsible for the operation. Later that same day, Taro retrieved his 2-year-old guitar, quietly hoping that life in Tokyo might finally teach him how to play. For 3 more days, Poro anxiously checked every call, still wary of another scammer. When Utah's number appeared on the screen, suspicion crept in once again, though Utah himself had no idea what was going on. Poro, Prince of Demons, raced after the runaway children, caught in the helpless role of their reluctant caretaker. Little Utah darted barefoot across the ground, ignoring Poro's desperate shouts to stop and only picking up speed as he ran. It all began some time ago when 2 familiar demons made yet another attempt to defeat him. Boasting loudly, they declared that today would be the day they finally took down the prince and claimed the throne for themselves. In response, Kimura defiantly raised his middle finger, while Poro let out a weary sigh and muttered, "Incurable fools." The demons, growing weary, assured one another that this time their plan would succeed. A spell called the Frog of Youth struck him, transforming the victim back into childhood. Poro managed to deflect the frog, yet failed to notice as it crashed into his friends. An explosion erupted, and in an instant the entire group was transformed into children. Cradling tiny Utah in his arms, he gazed down at the infant's wide, wondering eyes. Behind him, a lone demon chanted a spell, only for it to backfire and strike him instead. Grabbing both her partner and the frog, he made a hasty escape, shouting a warning that everything would be over once they woke up. At last, Poro realized the key was simply waiting until the little ones drifted off to sleep. It sounded easy enough, at least in theory. The book suggested tiring out the children before bedtime, so he launched into energetic games with them. The infants showed no intention of drifting off to sleep, and the chaos in the room only intensified. As a child, Kimura imitated Utah and began smashing the furniture. Poro pleaded for them to stop. Meanwhile, little Ruika delighted in tossing fiery orbs, her laughter echoing as she played. The toys had already been bought, yet none of them seemed to do the trick. At that moment, Poro realized that waiting for natural tiredness was the only solution. For the first time, he realized just how challenging raising children could be for humans. In the demon world, offspring were simply tossed from the mountain, left to survive or perish on their own. The thought puzzled him. Why would anyone willingly subject themselves to such torment? Then Kimura crawled over and quietly asked for a bedtime story. A notorious book hater requested a reading session. Poros's heart skipped a beat, yet he dutifully opened the book and began to read. Fighting off memories of his own childhood, he focused on the words, careful not to draw the children into any demonic pastimes. Long ago, Poro's mother used to say that feeding and rocking children revealed the frailty of people. Yet Poro found different virtues in these acts, seeing more than just signs of strength. A gentle smile spread across his face as understanding dawned. Care itself was a form of strength. In that moment, he recognized this as her truest maternal duty. As Kimura listened to the tale, a drowsy haze settled over him, and he rubbed his eyes in surrender to sleep. Suddenly, the patter of playful footsteps echoed from behind. Little Yuta, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, set about provoking Kimura by tossing water-filled balloons at him. Water balloons splashed over Poro and Kimura, while Yuta burst into laughter. Jolted awake, Kimura sprang into action as the chase began. Kimura rushed after Yuto, while Poro let out a resigned sigh, setting aside his hopes for sleep once more. Behind them, the lively shouts of young girls rang out. Nona and little Ruika launched into a fierce duel of strength, so intense that even the demon nanny watched on in dread. The children tussled like a litter of kittens, while Poro, barely holding on, struggled to keep them apart.
Потрібно місце для енергії. Швидко. Поро згадав про дитячий майданчик і повів усіх туди.
The little ones burst with joy as Ruika dashed toward the slide, and Yuta claimed his place on the swing. The playground stretched wide, filled with children lost in their games. The plan had worked perfectly. On a nearby bench, mothers exchanged quiet whispers, convinced that he must be the older brother. Out of nowhere, a chubby boy snatched the doll from the girl's hands. Holding it high above his head, he burst into laughter. Boredom overtook him, and he shoved the little girl aside, tossing her doll to the ground. While the mother rushed to comfort her daughter, the troublemaker clambered into the sandbox and trampled over the castle built by Kimura and the other children. Tears welled up in the children's eyes, but Kimura stood firm, grasping the troublemaker by the collar. Poro rushed to intervene, but the stout boy's mother swiftly delivered a smack to Kimura's head, warning her to keep away from her son. Stunned by the accusation that her son had hurt others, the mother remained resolute, insisting on her duty to protect her child. Poro calmly explained that a mother's duty is to both protect and teach her child the difference between right and wrong. Unable to grasp the situation herself, she noticed the other parents nodding in agreement, lending their support to the demon instructor. Someone among the mothers commented that Taka-chan had never been scolded and had grown spoiled as a result. The boy's mother, however, simply looked embarrassed. While the little one sobbed into his mother's skirt, Kimura stepped forward and offered a hand of reconciliation. Childhood quarrels teach the value of making up quickly. Poro smiled. Lesson learned. Kimura extended not just a hand, but also offered a shovel and bucket, inviting them to build a castle together. The mother apologized to Poro, admitting that both of them still had much to learn. As night settled in, the little ones finally drifted off to sleep. Exhaustion weighing on him, Poro carried them home on his back, quietly savoring the peaceful silence. Children appeared to be peculiar little beings. Surprisingly, their presence never bothered him. A thought crossed his mind that his mother must have once felt the very same way. Morning light filtered through the windows as the group of teenage friends awoke in Yuta's house, surrounded by unfamiliar toys scattered across the floor. Memories of how they arrived there slipped through their minds like mist. In the midst of it all, Poro wore a gentle smile, still lost in his dreams. In another world, the demons Fustil and Rai continued their gentle pleas, urging their partner to drift into sleep so they could lift the spell. The Tenshai Temple Festival was fast approaching. Ruika slipped into a yukata, cheeks flushing as she wondered if the garment suited her. Her heart pounded in her chest. Poro appeared, holding up a poster that read, "Let's go together tomorrow." The suggestion failed to impress her. "A festival? There's no one to kill there," she scoffed, brushing him off. Poro simply smiled and replied, "See you tomorrow," before turning to leave, unfazed by Ruika's formal refusal. The friends leapt up, their voices bubbling with excitement as they chanted about dates, fireworks, and kisses. Words failed Ruika, leaving her completely speechless. Their relentless teasing left her cheeks blazing as red as a ripe tomato. The girls laughed loudly, calling her a silly little monkey. One of the girls handed Ruika a spare yukata. Catching her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognized the girl staring back, and without quite knowing why, found herself agreeing. As she strolled down the avenue, it struck her that she was surrounded by couples. Thoughts of Poro lingered in her mind, and her imagination conjured up images of romantic moments unfolding beneath a sky lit by fireworks. In his imagination, his hand gently stroked her hair as he whispered, "The fireworks are beautiful, but you outshine them all." Embarrassment flushed Rui's cheeks, and she pressed her hands against them. At that moment, Poro himself emerged from the crowd, dressed in a borrowed yukata from Udo, He noticed Ruika shivering beside him. Concern flickered across his face as he asked if she felt cold. Ruika stammered quietly, explaining her legs simply felt weak and unsteady. Poro expressed his gratitude for her assistance in unraveling the mysteries of human customs. With Yuta and Kimura unavailable, he extended the invitation to her instead. Festivals blend culture with faith, he declared with pride, determined to record every detail in his journal. Holding up a caramelized apple, an observation slipped out. Even here, the wisdom of people can be found. Offended by the remark, Ruika's expression hardened. Such insensitivity felt almost impossible to tolerate. With a mutter, she mentioned that at the festival, boys and girls often draw closer to each other. Poro nodded and continued on his way, only to be halted by Ruika. Her friend's advice echoed in her mind. Claim you're afraid of getting lost, then gently take his hand. With a trembling hand extended, she softly whispered her fear of disappearing into the crowd. Nerves frayed, Ruika reached out her hand but accidentally collided with a burly man and tumbled to the ground. Whispering, she said, "Let's hold hands so we don't get separated." Behind them, the man grumbled, his voice rough as if he had been burned by lava. Poro lifted the grumbler, who groaned, complaining he felt as though a truck had run him over. The demon responded with a calm smile, remarking that a real demon stampede was far worse. Ruika came close to tears, feeling a surge of resentment toward her own power for the first time. Poro gently slipped his arm beneath hers, suggesting with quiet care, "Let's think of everyone else as well. It's safer this way." Her gaze locked onto him, searching his face for any sign of understanding. The emotions stirring inside a young girl seemed utterly beyond his grasp. Clearly, the depth of her feelings remained unknown to him. Seeking to lift his spirits, Ruika led him to the shooting range. Following her friend's advice to cheer him up, she grabbed a rifle but missed her shot, pretending it was just bad luck. Poro carefully calculates the distance, resistance, and even the magic charge. According to her, without these precise measurements, the sphere won't reach its target. A shot rings out, carried by a sudden gust of wind magic. Ruika's hair sweeps back from the force. The bullet ricochets, sweeping away all the prizes in its path. The old man at the shooting gallery stares in disbelief as a single shot clears an entire shelf. The crowd erupts in applause, and Ruika's excitement grows wild, tangled with a surge of jealousy. Grumbling under her breath, she insists that she should have been the one to make an impression. Poro's, uninterested in winnings, hands everything back, more captivated by the allure of cotton candy, the fluffy cloud of sugar. Sensing something unusual, Ruika grows tense as apologies drift from somewhere nearby. A child from the Kimura clan grabbed hold of a passerby who had accidentally brushed against his precious takoyaki. The boy quickly apologized, yet Kimura refused to let go, his grip unyielding. Spotting Poro, Kimura released the man from his grip. A sly smile played on his lips as he explained, demonstrating the consequences for breaking the rules. Nearby, the frightened fellow stood trembling, fear etched across his face. Kimura mentioned that Yuta was somewhere nearby as well and invited them to join the goldfish scooping game. Poro's eyes lit up, and he eagerly led Ruika to the pool. Still uncertain, Ruika wondered if she could really catch a fish with such a delicate paper scoop. Friends had suggested she try to entice the boy a little. Ruika straightened her back, letting the yukata accentuate her figure. Though her friend whispered a warning not to overdo it, Ruika chose to take the risk. Poro offered a soft warning to be careful. In that exact moment, a little fish leapt straight into her yukata. Ruika let out a startled scream. Collapsing into giggles from the tickling, she left the boys blinking in surprise. They set off to explore, with Poro delighting in the vibrant array of amusements, while Ruika's mood darkened, disappointment piling on with every step. The demon inquires about the eerie mask perched atop her head. Anxiety flickers in the girl's mind as she wonders whether it doesn't suit her after all, despite her friend's earlier reassurances that it was just right. Completely baffled by the mask's purpose, Poro stares in confusion. Grabbing her head in frustration, Ruika resigns herself to defeat. At that moment, Poro spots Yuta and dashes toward him, leaving Ruika standing alone. Yuta beams with joy, admiring how well the yukata suits Poro. Meanwhile, Poro gazes at the cotton candy, remarking that it resembles a newly born cloud. Yuta laughs, explaining that people here eat these sweet clouds. Yuta turned to Poro, inquiring about Ruika's whereabouts. The demon, puzzled, remarked that they had just been together, then set off to look for Ruika, carrying the packet of fluffy cotton Yuta had given him. Wandering through this crowd, Ruika let out a weary sigh. Deep down, she knew nothing could be changed. Her life seemed reduced to a single purpose, to bring a powerful child into the world, while once again, Poro remained blind to her feelings. When the boys eagerly invited her to join them in setting off fireworks, Ruika pushed them away so forcefully, nearly knocking them to the ground, tears streaming down her face. Murmuring to herself, she found some comfort in the thought that this wasn't a real date. The fragile peace shattered when a group of bumbling demons erupted in shouts from a nearby stall advertising the finest yakisoba in hell. With an icy glare, Ruika halted the mischievous demons in their tracks. Their bravado vanished, leaving them frozen in stunned silence. Ruika arrived with a bag of snacks and a bottle of beer. The demons protested, reminding her that she was still a schoolgirl, but Ruika ignored their concerns, insisting they drop the act of pretending to be human and pour her another drink. A commotion reached Poro's ears. Ruika had already downed a hefty 100 mugs and was now threatening to burn the stall to the ground. The demons pleaded with her to stop. Poro swiftly swept the girl into his arms. Protesting, she insisted that his diary seemed to matter more to him than she did. The demons simply shrugged, unsure what to make of the scene. Evening settled in as they sat together on the steps, watching fireworks bloom across the sky. Poro smiled, quietly noting the beauty of the scene. Ruika muttered that neither the celebration nor she herself meant anything to him. Her gaze fell to the ground, as she wondered why she was even here. At that moment, Poro leaned in and pressed a soft, gentle kiss upon her. "That's how it's usually done at festivals," he stammered, his uncertainty plain. Ruika stood frozen, as if her spirit had suddenly left her body. "Now I can die," she whispered quietly. The city was captivated by the beauty of the fireworks, their colors dancing in the night sky. Even Nona's brother God drew the number 1 from the lottery, a number that was never actually in the box. Meanwhile, on the demon side, an oddly familiar order prevailed. Some hurried off toward their classes, others got caught up in the latest hit song, while a few bragged about the hellgates that had recently opened in France. Few would have believed it, but bloody battles had all but disappeared. Ever since the new Demon King abolished the power rankings 3 years ago, tranquility had unexpectedly taken root. Life grew even brighter and more joyful, fulfilling the very dream that Poro had always cherished. The demon minister requested approval for the installation of new traffic lights and the budget for a baseball stadium. Meanwhile, store revenues tripled, and an Amazon delivery arrived as well. Tears stained the papers as the Pig King signed them, whispering to himself that he could not endure this any longer. Each day unfolded as an endless stream of work, leaving not a single moment for leisure or rest. Restless and desperate for a break, he pleaded for relief, but the long-eared secretary would only bounce in with a fresh stack of requests. Ever since his return from the human world, sweeping reforms transformed everything around him. Power lost its former dominance as new ideals known as values began to shape society. The secretary joked, suggesting that the only way to truly rest might be to die. Poro muttered to himself, realizing this place was the epitome of a black company. Except here, the workers were demons, not humans. Clutching his head, Poro realized the entries in his journal were already 3 years old, while his troubles continued to multiply. Nostalgia for peaceful days among people weighed heavily on him, and just then, the wall burst outward. Piraku's 2-year-old son leaped onto him, knocking his father off his feet. The little boy eagerly pleaded for playtime. The ministers burst in after him, crying out, "Your Majesty, the prince has escaped again." But the child dismissed them with a single wave of his hand. 100 guardian demons sprawled in a heap, defeated by Piraku's overwhelming strength. Poro scooped up the little one, curiosity bright in his eyes as he wondered aloud where such strength had come from. Piraku tugged playfully at his father's cheek, while the father offered a quick apology, explaining that a mountain of work awaited him. Go play with the others, please. Yet in the prince's eyes, tears began to shimmer. In the span of a single heartbeat, the palace crumbled into ruins. Tears welled up in Piraku's eyes. Poro raced after his son, while the ministers hurried behind him, clutching stacks of documents and calling out for signatures and permissions to start building the castle. A tremor rippled through the capital as an explosion echoed across the city. The demons assumed an earthquake had struck. In reality, it was the prince weeping, his sorrow powerful enough to level the entire city. Nearby, Fu and Paradise were busy launching the fair, their wandering notes on the human world quickly reaching a circulation of 10 billion copies. Reporters inquired about future projects, while the creators boasted of their commercial brilliance and aspirations for the Nobel Prize in Literature. They confessed that the reformist king's tales about the wonders of the human world had sparked their imagination. The moment they finished, Piraku swept their pavilion away with a single blow, leaving the writers stranded among the rubble. Meanwhile, rising at dawn, Ruika set out early with a single goal in mind: to find the freshest ribeye for her monster sashimi. The cry of Poro rang out, urging her to stop Piraku. The little one raced straight toward her. With arms outstretched, Ruika welcomed him, calling, "Come to Mama!" Piraku bumped into her, but instantly found peace in her embrace. A gentle smile played on her lips as she reflected, marveling at how easily he accepted her. This was true motherhood. Demon officials seized Poro, barking out orders to get to work as they pressed down on his shoulders. The king grumbled about terrifying methods of motivation, while Ruika, holding her son, laughed and called it pure horror. Chaos reigned all around as Ruika let out a weary sigh. It was time to change his diaper again, or else everything would soon be a mess. The officials remained unfazed, piling mountains of paperwork before Poro for his signature, even as the chaos of the so-called children's apocalypse swirled around them. The reformist king could only clutch his head in dismay, recognizing the gravity of the demonic threat. At the end of a frantic day, Poro collapsed onto the bed inside the renewed walls of the ruin. Ruika beamed with joy. In mere seconds, the palace had been restored to its former splendor. Despite having a wonderful job and a loving family, memories of peaceful days with friends pressed heavily on his heart. His thoughts lingered on photographs, each image bringing back moments spent together. With a playful grin, Ruika pressed a slip of paper to his forehead, announcing her surprise. That ticket served as a passage to the human world. With a conspiratorial wink, she promised to keep it a secret and whispered that everyone needs a break from time to time. Poro's hands trembled as he pulled his wife into a tearful embrace, whispering words of love. Ruika echoed his feelings, though a tinge of regret lingered that they could not share this tender moment in solitude. Leaving the affairs of his kingdom in the hands of his subordinates, the king ventured into the human world. The thought that 3 years might pass in the blink of an eye for demons but feel like an eternity for humans troubled him, making him wonder whether his friends still remembered him. At the station, God Kamui awaited him, joined by the angel Nona. Kamui playfully inspected his ticket, while Nona flashed a wink and promised they would share a meal. Poro stood in stunned confusion, trying to make sense of why these people had gathered here. Kamui offered a calm reply, explaining that everyone had their own motivations. He turned to Poro, gently pressing for his answer. What brought him to this place? Nona wrapped her arms around him and suggested they run away together in search of true love. But Poro only grew embarrassed, unable to meet her eyes. Kamui reached for his phone, intending to send a photo to Ruika. Poro stopped him, warning that it could be extremely dangerous. At first, God saw Poro as a madman, chasing an impossible dream of transforming demons. But over time, Poro accomplished what had once seemed utterly unattainable. Kamui offered his praise, acknowledging Poro's strength and insisting they had come to say it face to face. Caught off guard by such a compliment, Poro found himself momentarily speechless. Muttering about possible flattery, he watched as Kamui grabbed him by the collar, yanked open the train window, and pointed downward. The landscape outside had already changed. Without a second thought, Poro was tossed out of the carriage with a casual, "Give them my regards." Worry flickered across Nona's face, yet her divine brother offered a reassuring wink, confident in his own words. As a god, I always end up exactly where I'm needed. In the classroom, Utah sat at his desk and, without warning, glanced upward. Poro crashed through the roof and landed squarely in the center of the auditorium, leaving behind a gaping hole. Stares and harsh words pierced him like needles, driving a desperate longing for companionship, until footsteps echoed nearby, igniting a fragile hope within him. Tears streaming down his face, Kimura wrapped his arms around the teacher, clinging tightly after their long separation. Quietly, Utah approached them, saying nothing. Kimura let go, and Utah smiled, his eyes gleaming. You're always the one breaking through ceilings. Embarrassment colored Poro's cheeks, but inside, happiness bloomed. As he rose to his feet, the diary slipped from his hand by accident. From between the pages, a photograph of 3 old friends slid out. In that moment, Poro realized the human world had been waiting for him all along.